Hello, this is What If Naruto Was Experimented by Orochimaru Part 3. Let's begin. It had been nearly 2 weeks since Sakura had fallen unconscious and Naruto had been there nearly all day, every day. Sasuke stopped in for an hour or so daily, as did Hinata. Lee had wanted to be on constant vigil, but his current mission had kept him away. Tsunade came in at the end of visitors' hours to make Naruto go home. Naruto snored loudly as Tsunade carried him home on her back. She glared backwards at the latest bellow of noise to assault her ears. This kid could give Jiraya a run for his money, she said to no one. Naruto blinked his eyes rapidly as he awoke and wasn't all that surprised to find himself being carried home. "Hey, bitchan," he greeted with a yawn. "Hey, brat," Tsunade replied, and then was quiet for a few moments. "I've been doing some thinking. After Sakura wakes up, I want to announce your adoption." Naruto was instantly more alert. "Do you think that's a good idea? I also plan to tell them about the death of Kyuubi. Why the hell Sarutobi let the villagers think you were anything more than human is beyond me. I intend to set the record straight. I know I won't be able to change the minds of everyone, but if I can at least get them to think a little about the way they've treated you, then that will be enough for now," Tsunade announced, stopping and letting Naruto down from her back as she finished. "But..." Naruto began as his feet touched the ground. Tsunade turned around and put a hand on Naruto's shoulder. "You are my son. I will have you treated with respect," she said with a warm smile. Naruto smiled back and nodded. "Thanks." The two began walking again. "Baa-chan." "Hi." "I'm sorry," Naruto said as he stepped over a branch that had fallen on the path. "For what?" "I lied to you about why I didn't want you to adopt me at first." Tsunade stopped walking. "What do you mean?" "I wasn't afraid of you messing up being Hokage to keep me safe." "What was it then?" "I thought you'd treat me like a kid. I didn't want a bunch of new rules." Tsunade sighed. "Naruto, and I'm sure you know this by now, I will never try to change the way you live your life," she replied, smiling as she finished. "I think you've done a pretty good job of raising yourself. You're kind, happy, thoughtful and, when it's important at least," she said with a laugh, "very responsible. I doubt I could have done a better job with you." Naruto beamed with pride. "Thanks." Tsunade ruffled Naruto's hair. "You're welcome. Now, let's go home." Naruto nodded in affirmation and mother and son walked onto their home together. Sakura's head hurt. She moaned and forced her tired eyes open. "Where?" Her vision went in and out of focus. She saw a life monitor. The hospital. With some effort, she turned her head to face the opposite direction. She saw a few fuzzy figures standing around, talking to each other. One of them was obviously Lee. No one else wore that much green who was their age. She saw one of the figures turn to face her direction. "Nani?" Naruto's eyes widened. "Baa-chan. She's awake," he squeaked, pointing at Sakura excitedly. Sasuke did a double take at hearing his brother's voice go up a few octaves. When the hell did his voice start cracking, he wondered. He pushed it aside for the moment, due to the situation. "Naruto," Sakura thought with a small amount of fear. Naruto and Lee rushed over to Sakura's side. "Sakura, can you hear me?" Naruto asked in desperation. Sakura swallowed. Her throat was extremely dry. Water," she croaked. Naruto's eyes filled with tears of joy. "You got it," he said happily. He grabbed a cup from the water cooler and began to fill it. Lee helped Sakura to a sitting position. She took the water Naruto held out for her and drank it in one gulp. "Arigato," she said to Naruto, her voice sounding a little better. Sasuke moved into where he could see Sakura's face. "Sakura, how are you feeling?" Sakura's eyes went as wide as dinner plates. "Gee, get away from me," she screeched, using all her available strength to scuttle backwards to the wall at the head of the bed. Sasuke's face took on an expression of confusion. He looked at Naruto and was surprised to see a look of understanding in his eyes. "Sakura, what?" "No." Sakura screeched again, covering her face with her arms. "No, she begged, breaking down into sobs. Naruto sat down on the bed and wrapped his arms around Sakura in an attempt to calm her down. "Sakura-chan, he's not gonna hurt you." Sakura rocked a bit as she cried. Naruto, I'm so sorry. I wanted to know what really." "I know, I don't care about that now. I'm just glad you're back, Naruto said in a soothing voice. How could he? You're his best friend. How could he aim for your heart? Sakura cried. Sasuke's throat tightened painfully. Tsunade-sama told me something scared her, but she never said. Lee, meanwhile, was staring at Sasuke in disbelief. He tried to kill Naruto-kun. Why? He wondered. He wanted to hold Sakura, but felt it wasn't his place at the moment. Instead, he turned to Sasuke. What is this, Sasuke? He asked angrily. Sasuke closed his eyes tightly and sighed. It's none of your business, he said through his teeth. Lee glared at Sasuke. Anything that hurts Sakura-san this badly is my business. Sasuke, tell him, came Naruto's voice from the bed. Sasuke looked at his brother, incredulous. What? He questioned in a low voice. Tell him, I'm tired of secrets. If I'd told Sakura-chan about it a long time ago, this wouldn't even happened, Naruto said with regret. Sasuke sighed in angry defeat. There is another level to the Sharingan, an ultimate level. Ultimate level? Hinata asked from behind Tsunade. Sasuke sat down on a chair near the wall opposite the bed. It's called Manjikyu. It allows a person to use genjutsu so powerful, they can kill someone inside their own mind. Everyone's eyes widened. Sakura was even interested enough to slow her crying and listen a little. The only way to awaken the Manjikyu is to kill your closest friend, Sasuke said in a pained voice. Everyone in the room sucked in a breath, eyes wide with disbelief. Lee spoke with disgust. You tried to kill the person you care most about, for power. According to Itachi, what causes the Manjikyu to form is the pain of extreme loss. Loss caused by your own hands. Sasuke looked at Naruto. I'm sorry, even if what happened back then was mostly because of the seal, it's no excuse, he said sadly. Naruto looked down. Seal or no seal, I knew you didn't want to kill me. You thought you had to. Sasuke looked at Naruto with surprise. Naruto continued. And that's part of the reason I fought so hard to get you back. I didn't want you to go through more pain. Sasuke's face fell, his mouth hanging open in an O shape. Naruto, he said once he found his voice. Naruto sighed, and then his expression looked as though he had decided something. Excuse me, Sakura-chan, he said as he released the girl that he'd been holding. He looked up at Tsunade. Bie-chan, I need you to get Neji, Shikamaru, Kiba, and Kakashi-sensei. Why? Tsunade asked. I want to tell my friends everything, Naruto replied, his voice filled with trepidation. Tsunade's eyebrows knitted together. Are you sure? Hi, Naruto answered with more confidence. Tsunade nodded. All right. Shikamaru yawned as he sat down in the plush armchair near the window. Kakashi leaned against a wall and Neji stood in the middle of the room with his arms folded. Thanks for coming, guys, Naruto greeted solemnly. He took a deep breath. I have some things I need to tell all of you. He closed his eyes and took a calming breath before continuing. You all know about when Kyuubi attacked the village. Everyone nodded, except of course those who knew what was coming. You were lied to. Kyuubi wasn't killed. He was sealed, Naruto gulped, inside me. Neji's eyes widened. What? You're honestly telling me you didn't know? Shikamaru asked in disbelief. Everyone turned to stare at the lazy shinobi. How did you? Neji inquired. It wasn't that hard to figure out. You can't kill a Yuma, not directly anyway. You have to seal it inside a living being, one with a chakra system advanced enough to hold it. A human is the only logical choice. The older a chakra system is, the more likely it will reject such a large and inhuman chakra, so the person creating the seal would need a newborn baby for the container. Naruto was the only person our age that all the adults in the village seemed to hate. He shrugged. Simple, really. Everyone stared slack-jawed at Shikamaru. After a moment, Tsunade hemmed. Go ahead, Naruto. Naruto nodded, somewhat amazed that not a single person had turned on him, even for an instant. 2 months ago, when Orochimaru took me, I was cut open. He peeled my skin back so Kyuubi couldn't heal me. Neji gritted his teeth and Hinata looked a little nauseous from the memory. Sasuke pushed my wound together and Kyuubi was able to seal it, but it used too much of his chakra. He died. Naruto said as though he was sorry the Nine Tails was dead. Even Shikamaru showed surprise. But that shouldn't have been enough to kill a Yuma that powerful. Tsunade folded her arms. Not by itself, no. I've been researching the jutsus Orochimaru used on Naruto. They are designed to remove seals, but they also have the side effect of corrupting the flow of chakra in the being residing within the seal. Essentially, Kyuubi's own chakra poisoned him. The combination of that and using an enormous amount of power to heal Naruto apparently proved fatal. Shikamaru frowned in thought. Makes sense. Kyuubi left me a going-away present, Naruto said as he began to mold some chakra. Everyone watched in amazement at Naruto's new chakra color. However, Tsunade, Sasuke, Sakura, and Hinata were confused. The chakra wasn't yellow. It was a swirling mix of red and blue. What the hell? Tsunade questioned. Naruto opened his eyes when Tsunade spoke. He noticed the new colors and stared at them. What happened? Neji turned to Tsunade. What is it? It was yellow just yesterday. Not to mention it shouldn't be possible for it to be two colors at once, Tsunade replied with a frown. What does it mean, Tsunade-sama? Hinata asked. Tsunade frowned in thought. I don't know. I'll research it when I get home. She let out a puff of air. Naruto, I believe you have a few more things to say. Naruto nodded. Naruto scratched the side of his face in embarrassment. Tsunade no Be-chan adopted me, he said with a smile. Congratulations, Naruto, Neji said after the momentary shock wore off. HMPF. You were better off before, Shikamaru said with a wry smile. Tsunade stalked over to Shikamaru, holding up a fist. What did you say? She said dangerously. Shikamaru cringed. It was nothing, he replied, waving his hands protectively in front of his face. Geez, how troublesome, he thought as Tsunade walked back to her previous position. Anyway, I also found who my parents were a few weeks ago, Naruto said quietly. Except for Tsunade's, all eyes were suddenly fixed on Naruto. Naruto-kun, that's wonderful. Hinata cried cheerfully. Who are they? Have you met them yet? Sakura asked eagerly. Naruto's face fell. They died when I was born, he answered, his voice sad. Hinata made a tiny gasp. Oh, Naruto-kun, she said as she bit her lower lip. It's okay, Naruto said, giving Hinata a small smile. What were their names? Sakura asked. Gently. My dad's name was Minato. Naruto began before being cut off by a strange choking sound that came from Kakashi. Kakashi looked as though he'd seen a ghost. What is it, sensei? Sasuke asked with concern. Kakashi's beloved book simply fell from his hands as he stood and walked slowly toward his blonde-haired student. When he got to the bed, he reached out a shaking hand and touched the side of Naruto's face. I always thought you looked like him, he said in a choked voice. Sakura was confused. Sensei. Kakashi pushed his forehead protector up and away from his sharing an eye. But how? Sandaime told us you were dead. Naruto was shocked to see Kakashi's eyes filled with tears. It was a lie. He did it to protect me, Naruto informed him. So you really are Yondaime's son? Kakashi said as though he wasn't still sure he believed it. Immediately following Kakashi's question, everyone in the room stared, positively bug-eyed, at Naruto. You're the son of the fourth? Lee asked in shock and awe. Naruto nodded. Yeah. Kakashi gripped Naruto's shoulder affectionately. It's like a part of him is back from the dead, he said, hurriedly wiping his tears away with his other hand. Suddenly his expression turned dangerous. Jiraya. I already took care of it, Hatake, Tsunade said with a hand on Kakashi's shoulder. Naruto looked at Tsunade in confusion. What did Orochimaru do? Kakashi stared at Tsunade in disbelief. He doesn't know. Tsunade shook her head. I want Jiraiya to tell him himself. Tell me what? Naruto questioned, growing impatient. Ask Jiraiya. I want him to be the one who sees your reaction to it, Tsunade said icily. Naruto growled a sigh. Dr. Tokiha came into the room. He saw Sakura sitting up and smiled broadly. She's awake, he said cheerfully. Sakura smiled and nodded. Well then, how about you all clear out of here so I can check her over? Dr. Tokiha requested. By everyone, Sakura said with a wave. Sakura's visitors returned her goodbye and walked out the door, except for Naruto and Lee. Naruto smiled at Sakura. "Glad you're okay," he said with a grin. Sakura smiled. "Thanks." Later, Naruto said with a mock salute. Once Naruto was out the door, Lee turned to the girl he loved. "I don't know what I would have done if I could never see that smile again," he said as he lovingly touched her cheek. Sakura paused for a moment, unsure of what to say. "Lee-kun, it's all right," Lee said softly. "I know you don't feel the same," he said with a small smile. "I'll see you later." As he turned around to leave, he felt Sakura's hand grab his. "Lee-kun, I can't make any promises," Sakura said gently, "but don't give up on me yet." "Sakura-san?" Lee questioned, trying desperately to quell the bit of hope that was entering his heart. "Just give me some time to think," Sakura explained. "Oh, okay," Lee said in mild confusion. He looked at the door. "Well then, I have to get back to my training, JA," he said nervously.
"Yeah, Lee-kun."
Lee smiled and left the room. Sakura stared out the window, watching some kids playing ninja tag. It was so simple back then, she thought. An image of Sasuke entered her mind, but his adorable smirk was quickly replaced by the murderous grin he had worn in Naruto's memories, making Sakura wince. "Sasuke-kun, I can't love you anymore, but I'm not sure I know how to move on." "All right, Miss Haruno, let's see if you're ready to go home," said Dr. Tokiha. Sakura nodded. "All right." As Dr. Tokiha began the usual stages of a routine physical, Sakura's mind wandered to the memory of Naruto telling everyone about Kyuubi. "I'm so glad everyone took it so well. He's already been through so much." Of course, she knew exactly what had gone through Neji and Lee's minds. She had had the same thoughts when she had been told the truth. Tsunade moved to sit behind her desk. "There is something you must know before you go on this mission. What I'm about to tell you is not to leave this room. Understood?" "Hi, Hokage-sama," Sasuke replied. "The Kyuubi that attacked Konoha 14 years ago was not destroyed as you were told. It was sealed inside Naruto," Tsunade explained. "What?" Sakura and Hinata squeaked in unison. Sakura's breathing became slow and quiet as she absorbed what she'd just been told. After a moment, she noticed Sasuke didn't seem at all surprised. "Sasuke-kun, you knew?" she asked in wide-eyed disbelief. "Hi, Naruto told me, after he stopped me from going to Orochimaru," Sasuke said, his eyes looking at the floor. "Why didn't he tell me?" Sakura asked, her voice rising a bit in pitch. "I saw him use the 9 tails when we fought. I asked him what it was and he told me. I think he didn't tell you because he was afraid of how you'd react," Sasuke said, raising his eyes to Sakura's. Sakura bit her lower lip. Tsunade hemmed and the teens turned their attention back to her. "We have received intelligence reports that Orochimaru plans to extract Kyuubi from Naruto and transfer it to himself. This would not only increase Orochimaru's power, but also kill Naruto in the process," she said gravely. No," Hinata said loudly. "You 3 will be accompanied by Kakashi and a team of Anbu. They will act as a distraction while you get Naruto out," said Tsunade. "But we're not enough to take on Orochimaru," Sakura exclaimed. "We're hoping that the distraction will be enough that you won't have to," Tsunade explained. "Now, as for the reason you were told about Kyuubi, should Orochimaru make even the slightest miscalculation when attempting the needed seal transfer jutsus, you may wind up facing the Kyuubi itself." Sakura shuddered at the memory as Dr. Tokiha removed the blood pressure cuff. "Well, Sakura, I think you can go home tomorrow morning. For now, why don't you try to get some sleep?" "Hi, thank you," Sakura replied. Dr. Tokiha smiled and left the room. Sakura laid down, her skin relishing in the smoothness of the cool pillow. As she closed her tired eyes, one thought came to her mind, and for some reason, she found it comforting. I really do like Lee-kun." With that thought, she drifted off into a restless sleep. Naruto paced up and down the floor in Tsunade's office. His stomach was positively bursting with butterflies as he sighed for the millionth time. "Naruto, you're getting on my nerves," Tsunade grumbled. Naruto had been pacing for the better part of a half hour. Just then Shikamaru poked his head into the room. "Excuse me, Tsunade-sama. We're ready," he informed her. Naruto stopped pacing and turned a few shades of green. Tsunade saw this and gave him a hug. "It'll be okay," she said warmly. She released him and stood up. "Now remember, wait here until I send for you." Naruto took a deep breath and nodded, silently reminding himself that it was not possible for his heart to burst through his chest. Tsunade walked out the door and headed for the roof of the Hokage Tower. As she went to open the door at the top of the stairs, she herself took a deep breath, then turned the knob and stepped out into the bright afternoon sunshine. The murmuring in the crowd ceased almost immediately when Tsunade appeared at the edge of the roof. The fabric on the sides of her Hokage headgear fluttered in the gentle breeze as she watched the crowd for a moment, hoping to discern the general mood. "Well, it's now or never," she thought. "Thank you, everyone, for coming out here on such short notice. I have some announcements to make, and I'm sure at least one of them will make you all very happy." She paused for a short moment before continuing. "To the children gathered here today, it is time for you to know that the Kyuubi was not killed in the battle 14 years ago. It was sealed inside a human container by the 4th Hokage, and that container was Naruto." A flurry of whispers broke out among the children who hadn't already known. Tsunade waited for them to die down a bit, then held up her hand to silence them completely. "I have more to tell you. The Kyuubi has recently died," Tsunade informed the crowd. The reaction was not what she expected. All at once there was loud cheering from about half the crowd, both from those who believed Naruto was the Kyuubi, and from others who didn't. But there were also a good number of people crying. Some people were stunned into a horrified silence, and still others seemed angry for some reason. "Please calm down, everyone," Tsunade said loudly. It took a moment, but the crowd became quiet. "On a happy, personal note for me, I recently adopted one of the village orphans," she said with a wide smile. "This will be interesting," she thought. She turned around and nodded her head at a jounin who was near the door. Unseen by the crowd, Naruto came out the door and stood just out of everyone's line of vision. "I would like to introduce you to my son." She turned her head and waved someone forward. Naruto walked up and stood next to Tsunade. The reaction from the people of Konoha was explosive. Some people were ecstatically happy, although confused, and about half the crowd looked like they had just been shown the most horrible monster they could think of. From at least a quarter of the people came angry shouts of protest. Tsunade heard, "What the hell is this? Liar! And you said he was dead," above the roar of the crowd. Tsunade surveyed the angry ones with a venomous stare. She glanced at Naruto, who looked like he was about to hyperventilate. "Silence!" she roared. A few last retorts were thrown, but eventually everyone stopped talking for fear of provoking Tsunade. "Now all of you will listen to me," she yelled angrily. She took a moment to calmly stare at the crowd, as if daring them to say something. "This boy, no matter what you may think, is not now, nor has he ever been the Kyuubi. He has also never been a danger to any of you. When I first came back to this village, I learned a lot about Naruto's past, enough to make me disgusted and appalled at a good majority of the people here." The eyes of some of the angry audience members softened a bit. "He has done nothing to any of you, except keep your loved ones safe for the past 14 years, she informed the people, glaring. "And what I told you is true. The Kyuubi is dead. Orochimaru took Naruto a month and a half ago, wanting to transfer the Kyuubi to himself, but wound up accidentally killing Kyuubi in the process." Smiles returned to some of the previous complainers. "Now, I know it will take time for you to see Naruto differently. Some of you may never let go of your hate, but I hope that someday, the people of this village will once again become the people I remember. A people who are kind, who help strangers on the street, and who have love in their hearts for the people who need it the most," she said, glancing at Naruto. "That's all I have to say. Dismissed." She put a hand on Naruto's shoulder and together they walked away from the stunned crowd. Ten stood stock still, her mind still reeling from what she'd just been told. She looked at others that were still at the base of the tower. Many people looked deep in thought. Some looked disgusted, but she was surprised to see that nearly half of the people around her looked sad. They probably realized they've been acting like serious assholes, she thought in contempt. She looked up at a clock on one of the surrounding buildings. Better go train. With a final glance at the Hokage Tower, she disappeared in a puff of smoke, earning complaints from the people closest to where she had been. Ten walked onto her favorite training field and was disappointed to find someone already using it. It was even worse that that person happened to be someone she thought of as extremely gorgeous. She didn't have a crush on him, but she couldn't help blushing when she was in his presence. She watched as he blew a tree to shreds with kaidori and felt her heart skip a beat. God, I love strong men, she thought with a playfully predatory smile as she walked towards him. Hi, Sasuke-kun. Sasuke blinked back his exhaustion and turned to face the one who had interrupted him. Sorry, but I'm busy at the moment. 10-10, he said respectfully. Truthfully, she was the only kunoichi he respected. She didn't swoon whenever she saw him like the others, and she was strong. He may have changed a bit since the waterfall battle, but he still had little patience with weak people. 10-10 looked around the training field. Several trees had been mutilated. Wow! She thought. Oh, mind if I wait here? Sasuke frowned as he thought for a moment. Do as you like, he answered. 10-10 nodded and sat down on a log a safe distance away. Sasuke pulled out a few kunai and flung them at a tree he had previously prepped with tiny targets. As she twirled a kunai on her right index finger, 10-10 watched his technique with a frown. Only 94% accuracy, she thought. Sasuke threw another kunai and 10-10 winced. Gah! He was off by half an inch, she thought as she fidgeted by twirling her kunai faster. With each throw Sasuke made that wasn't completely dead center, she found it harder and harder to stay sitting. Finally, she flung her hands forward in frustration, accidentally throwing the kunai in the process. It whizzed by Sasuke's right ear and landed perfectly in the middle of the target he had been aiming for. What the hell? Thought Sasuke, who had been blocking her view of the target at that moment. She did that without being able to see the target. How? He turned to see 10-10 standing stick straight with a nervous grimace on her face. Sorry. It was a reflex, she explained, scratching an itch on her finger that had been the product of friction from spinning the kunai for so long. Sasuke cocked an eyebrow and looked back at the tree. One hell of a reflex, he said with mild interest in his voice. 10-10 smiled. She thought for a moment. Want some tips? Sasuke frowned. You can't teach better aim. Only practice can do that. 10-10 scratched the back of her neck. Actually, your technique is wrong. Excuse me. Sasuke replied indignantly. You need more snap to your wrist when you throw. You arc it too much, 10-10 replied carefully. Sasuke's frown deepened. I don't need help, he said firmly. An 8-year-old Sasuke gritted his teeth in frustration. He had missed his target by a whole 2 inches. He heard a cough behind him and groaned inwardly. Itachi stood about 6 feet away. He had his arms folded and was shaking his head. You need to relax more, Sasuke. If you would help me practice, I'd be better by now. Sasuke retorted. Itachi remarked as he shook his head and walked away. Damn him, why won't he teach me? He thought angrily as he watched his brother walk away. Sasuke made a short, irritated hiss through his teeth at the memory. 10-10 saw Sasuke's expression, but decided not to comment on it. She closed her eyes in defeat and sighed. Have it your way then. I'm gonna go find somewhere to train. Watching you is gonna drive me nuts, she replied with a small laugh. Sasuke watched her go. Once he was sure she was a good distance away, he turned to the target and threw a kunai, snapping his wrist just a little more than usual. The kunai hit dead center. He folded his arms. He remarked with an intrigued expression. 3 weeks later, Naruto sat on the ground in the middle of the Hokage training field, waiting for Jiraya. When he gets there, tell him I said to tell you the truth, Tsunade said firmly. Naruto frowned and sighed. What did she mean by the truth? He wondered. It was at that moment that the person he'd been waiting for appeared on the back of a medium-sized summon frog. He looked around for a moment before turning to Naruto. Where's Tsunade? She said she wanted to see me. Actually, she said she wanted me to talk to you, Naruto said with a bit of confusion. She told me she wants you to tell me the truth. Jiraiya stiffened, realizing he'd been tricked. Damn you, Tsunade, he growled in his mind. He sighed loudly and sat down next to the boy, cupping his chin in his right hand as he thought of what to say. What I'm about to tell you may make you hate me for the rest of your life, he said sadly. Hate you? Naruto echoed in confusion. Jiraiya put up a hand in order to ask Naruto to be quiet. As you know, Minato was my student. He was like a younger brother to me. On the day he became Hokage, I couldn't have been prouder. By that time he'd already married your mother. She was one of the most amazing kunoichi I've ever seen, younger than me, but already the captain of my Anbu squad. He paused, taking a moment to calm his emotions a bit. On the night Kyuubi attacked, she was 8 months pregnant with you. As she was getting ready to join the fight, I arrived at the Hokage residence with a message from Minato. He wanted her to stay out of it, but, she wouldn't hear of it. She loved Konoha so much. When I tried to block her from leaving, she threw me into a wall. I ran out the door as soon as I could think straight. By the time I got to the field, she had already. He wiped away some unshed tears. She was mortally wounded. There was nothing anyone could do. Her injuries caused her to go into labor. I was the one who delivered you. Naruto's eyes widened in shock. Why, you, delivered me? Naruto stammered. He suddenly felt like he'd been handed yet another family member. He smiled widely. Jiraya saw Naruto's happy smile and became sick to his stomach. Naruto. The seriousness in his voice made Naruto's smile falter a bit. That's not all of it. You see, there were only 3 people who knew you hadn't died at birth. Minato, Sandame, and me. He finished with as much regret as human eyes could hold. This news shattered Naruto's feelings of family toward the aging Sannin like the most delicate of crystal. You knew. Naruto yelled, his fists balled so tightly that his nails drew blood. He stood, moved in front of Jiraiya and punched him in the face, knocking him over. Why? He screamed, years of loneliness and pain all coming to the surface in an instant. Why didn't you take me with you? I couldn't. I had no idea how to raise a baby, Jiraiya said with nothing but sadness in his voice as the tears welled up again. Naruto's whisker marks became a bit more defined as his breath came in angry puffs through his teeth. That's just a bullshit excuse, he raged, punching Jiraiya again, this time knocking him back a few meters. Tears began to fall from his cerulean blue eyes. You could have gotten books, he screamed, backhanding Jiraiya. You didn't want me. The tears flowed down Naruto's face in force now, and by this point his voice was cracking frequently. If you had, you would have found a way. Jiraiya's hatred of himself grew with each angry syllable. He knew Naruto was no match for him, but he didn't care. He knew each punch Naruto threw was well deserved, and so he simply let the boy punish him. It wasn't until Naruto created 20 or so bunshins of himself that Jiraiya began to wonder if he shouldn't try to stop him. Naruto. Shut up. I hate you. With that last word, Naruto's voice dropped in pitch. In his new, deeper voice, he screamed out his attack. You. 8 of the bunshins slid in and kicked Jiraiya into air. So. A second group was thrown into the air by the first group. Jiraiya was propelled even higher by the second barrage of kicks. 10 more clones used the tops of the surrounding trees as launching points and shot themselves at him. They kicked the surprised man to a deadly height. Ki! Naruto screamed as he led the final group of clones in for the finishing move. Naruto Rendan. With tears streaming down his face, Jiraiya watched as 6 Naruto feet came down from the sky above him and drilled into his torso. Blood sprayed from his mouth as his body shot toward the ground. Jiraiya's head was spinning and he was barely able to think as he summoned Gamabunta. The great frog appeared and Jiraiya landed with a thud on his head. Gamabunta rotated his eyes upward just before Naruto landed in a crouching position near Jiraiya. What the hell is going on here, brat? He asked as Jiraiya stumbled to his feet. Naruto didn't hear Gamabunta. His eyes turned red as he ran over to Jiraiya with a kunai in hand. Jiraiya barely managed to shield his face with his arms as Naruto brought down the weapon. Gamabunta frowned and used his tongue to pluck Naruto off of his head, then transferred him to one of his large, webbed hands. Oi, brat! Gamabunta said with irritation as he maneuvered Naruto so he could see his face. I asked you a question, he demanded firmly. Naruto thrashed around violently in an effort to escape as he yelled curses at the giant frog. Let me the fuck go. I'm gonna kill that piece of shit. Gamabunta decided he wasn't going to get any answers out of Naruto in his current mental state. Jiraiya, explain this. Jiraiya took a moment to tie off the cut on his arm with some medical wrap before answering. It's personal. Let's just say I deserved what I got, he said sadly as he closed his eyes in emotional pain. Naruto kept struggling and making animalistic screams at the top of his lungs. Grah! Jiraiya watched him with the heaviest of hearts. He sighed heavily, reached into his hip pouch and pulled out a small jar of green powder. He poured a small amount into his hand and blew it at his former student and friend. Naruto's eyes rolled back into his head and he hung limp in Gamabunta's grasp. Jiraya replaced the top of the jar and returned it to its hiding place. He should wake up in about an hour. He turned his back to Naruto's sleeping form. I won't be back. Could you tell him when he wakes up that I'm sorry, he said in a chopped voice. Gamabunta frowned in thought. Hi, he agreed. Jiraya nodded numbly and jumped away into the forest. He hadn't known this much pain since the death of his prized student and friend. He felt like he'd lost him all over again. After a few minutes of running, he stopped on a very wide tree branch. His hand covered his eyes as he slid down the trunk into a sitting position. His sobs of despair were heard only by the creatures of the forest and the wind. Gamabunta stared at the boy that was lying on the ground impatiently. Damn it, brat. Wake up already, he grumbled. Suddenly he had an idea. He took a long drag on his pipe and blew it into Naruto's face. After a second, Naruto began coughing. His eyes opened and he sat up, gasping for air. He looked up at Gamabunta. What the hell was that for? He asked bitterly as he folded his legs Indian style. Gamabunta cocked an eye ridge. You were sleeping too long, he said bluntly. Naruto rested his face in his right hand and sighed heavily through the splayed fingers. Where's Orochimaru? He left, kid. He said to tell you he won't be coming back, and that he's sorry, Gamabunta replied gently. Naruto's lips shook slightly as his eyes filled with tears. Now that the object of his anger wasn't within punching distance, his pain took over. He lowered his head and dropped his hands to the ground. He then alternated between sobbing loudly and punching the ground in angered frustration. Naruto's pitiful crying made Gamabunta suddenly unsure of what to do. He wasn't good at comforting people. He had always left the comforting of his children to his mate. Just as he was about to attempt putting a webbed finger on the boy's shoulder, he saw Tsunade running towards them from the other side of the field. He looked up at the sky. Thank you, he thought. I saw you from my office window, Tsunade said through sucking in lungfuls of air. She looked at Naruto. What happened? Jiraya. Gamabunta answered, hoping she'd know what that meant, since he sure as hell didn't. Tsunade's expression fell. Oh, she remarked softly. She swallowed and knelt down next to her son. Gra! Naruto cried in anguish as his fists slammed into the ground again. Tsunade bit her lower lip to keep herself from crying. Naruto! She put her hand on his shoulder. He flinched and slapped it away. She gritted her teeth. Damn it! Why did I think he could handle this without me? If you won't be needing me, I think I will return home, Gamabunta informed Tsunade. Tsunade nodded and Gamabunta disappeared. She turned her attention to Naruto, who had gone back to crying, and watched him for a brief moment before surrounding the distraught boy with her arms. Naruto's body tensed when he realized Tsunade was hugging him. He put all his strength into trying to escape, but she refused to let go. Leave me alone, damn it, he choked out in frustration. Her eyes opened when she felt Naruto go slack in her arms. He looks so small, Tsunade thought as she began to stroke his hair in a motherly fashion. I'm here. Tsunade's maternal words stirred something in Naruto. It was the second time she had said something like that. He suddenly wished with all his heart that he'd had this comfort when he was younger. He barely thought it before he said it. Ka-san! He cried. Nothing could have described the feeling of her adopted son saying that word to her. She held him ever closer. Naruto! She said warmly, I'm here, I'm here. It was then that she realized just how much she loved being a mother. I'm here, for as long as you need me. As Tsunade, Hinata, Sasuke, and Sakura rounded the corner and the Hokage state came into view, they saw the person they were looking for. Sakura stared at Naruto, who was lying on the roof. How long has he been up there? Tsunade sighed. About 6 hours now, and nothing I say makes a difference. She paused for a moment. He won't even come down for ramen, she said with a frown. Nani? Sakura said sharply. That is serious, Sasuke remarked. I was hoping maybe you kids could snap him out of it, Tsunade explained with a please do this expression. Hinata nodded. We'll do our best. Tsunade smiled. Thanks, she replied. She's really gotten more confident since Naruto began to notice her. The teens nodded and headed off to the roof. Naruto lay on his back, staring up at the sky. He just didn't want to do anything. He had been betrayed and could think of nothing else. He heard them when they landed on the roof, but he didn't acknowledge their presence. "Naruto-kun," Hinata said once they reached him. No answer came. "Naruto, we were gonna go to a movie, wanna come?" Sakura asked, making sure she stayed at least 5 feet away from Sasuke. Again, no answer. Both girls looked at Sasuke as if to say, "Your turn." He sighed in defeat. "Come on, Dobi, we'll treat you to some ramen," he offered. Still nothing. Finally, Naruto sighed. He still didn't turn his head, but he did speak. "Look, I know you guys are trying to help, but I really want to be alone right now." "Are you sure, Naruto-kun?" Hinata asked tentatively. His voice changed. He sounds amazing," she thought as heat rose to her cheeks.
Yeah,
Naruto said with a sigh. Sakura chewed her lower lip. It was strange to see her usually happy, hyperactive friend like that. "It's not natural. Like we've been sucked into an alternate dimension or something," she thought. "Well, if you want to talk," she offered. Naruto replied solemnly. Sasuke turned and began to walk away. Sakura waited a few seconds to be sure they wouldn't wind up walking together on the way back to the main road, then also started walking. Hinata stayed where she was. "Are you coming?" Sakura asked. You two go ahead, I'm going to stay here," Hinata answered softly. Sakura smiled slightly. "Okay." She put a hand on Hinata's shoulder. "Good luck," she whispered. Hinata nodded appreciatively and the other two left. "Naruto-kun." "I thought I said I wanted to be alone," Naruto replied, still not looking anywhere but the sky. Hinata swallowed, wondering what on earth had possessed her to be so bold. I know, I won't say anything, but do you mind if I just sit with you?" Naruto sighed, realizing he probably wasn't going to win this one. "Whatever." "Thank you," Hinata said before sitting down. She turned her head to look at her crush. "I wish I knew what to say to make you stop hurting," she thought sadly. Naruto tried not to think of the girl sitting next to him, but was failing miserably. "Damn it. If I run off she'll probably follow me. Why the heck did I tell her she could stay?" After lying there in silence for nearly 15 minutes, Naruto turned his head toward Hinata. Her hair caressed her face as a gentle wind swept the rooftop and her eyes looked to the sky as though she was searching for advice from the heavens. Naruto felt a strange peace come over him as he watched her. Somehow, and he couldn't figure out why for the life of him, her just being there was making him feel better. "Ne, Hinata-chan," Naruto said quietly. Hinata made a surprised sound and turned to Naruto. "Yes, Naruto-kun," she said gently, worried that if she said something wrong that Naruto might go back to not talking. "How much did Hahao tell you about what happened?" Naruto asked in a somewhat flat tone. "Not much. She only said that something Jiraiya-sama said upset you." Naruto sighed. On one hand he liked that Tsunade had respected his privacy, but on the other he really wasn't in the kind of mood where he wanted to have to explain about something painful. "Well, long story short, I found out that he knew who I was all this time." "You mean, he knew you were Yondame's son?" Hinata asked in wide-eyed disbelief. The two teens were quiet for another minute or so. "He left me here, Hinata," Naruto broke the silence bitterly. "Left me to rot in a village full of people who wouldn't be sad to see me cut into 1,000 pieces." His face creased in anger and his fist clenched at his side. "Naruto-kun," Hinata said with tears in her eyes. Naruto sat up and pulled his knees to his chest. "When I was little, I never thought that there was someone out there who knew who I was. In fact, until I read Shishue's letter, I thought I'd be an unknown orphan forever." Hinata wanted so badly to hug him, but she decided it wasn't the right time. Instead she sat and quietly listened to Naruto speak. Orochimaru said Shishue was like a brother to him. How can he say that and not take me with him? Naruto growled.
Ero, Senin.
Hinata stuttered, blushing. Naruto realized she'd never heard his nickname for Jiraya. "Sorry. It's an insult I call Jiraya. He's a massive pervert," he said with disgust. Hinata suddenly found the tiles on the roof very interesting. "Oh," she said in a tiny voice. Naruto's face flushed a bit at Hinata's embarrassment. It went away quickly though. Maybe he was scared. Hinata offered, playing with one of the sections of hair framing her face. Huh? Naruto questioned. He didn't get what she was talking about right away due to getting off track a moment before. Jiraya-sama, maybe he didn't think could raise you right. He could have gotten books. It isn't that hard, Naruto replied bitterly. It was all I could think of, sorry. Hinata said sadly. It's not your fault. I know, it's just, I hate that I can't think of anything to make you feel better, Hinata said with a sniff. Naruto closed his eyes, sighed and reopened them. Hinata-chan, he said as he gave her a hug. Thank you. Hinata gulped nervously, but returned the hug. Anytime, Naruto-kun. She released Naruto. Would you like to get some ramen? My treat, she said with a sweet smile and her fingers tented. Naruto noticed her tenting her fingers, but it seemed different somehow, almost coy. She's so cute. He blushed a little and blinked back his thoughts as he considered her offer for a moment. Sure, he answered. Hinata smiled widely at his answer and he suddenly felt a little lightheaded. Hinata stood up. Let's go then, she said, offering Naruto her hand. I can do this, it's just his hand, she thought in an effort to calm herself. Naruto gingerly took the hand that was offered and his heart skipped a beat. What is wrong with me? Grabbing her hand never bothered me before. He stood up, using her hand as leverage and was about to let go, but his hand wouldn't obey him. Hinata noticed that Naruto hadn't let go of her hand yet and began to feel her face heat up. Naruto-kun. Hinata's words seemed to snap his brain back to logical thought and he quickly let go of her hand, a slight pinkish tinge on his cheeks. He cleared his throat.
Sorry.
I was, thinking about something, he replied. Yeah, like how cute she is in that tank top, his subconscious teased. Shut up. Naruto said out loud without realizing it. Huh? Hinata asked, with confusion on her petite face. Nothing. Let's go. I'm starved, Naruto said with a smile that he hoped looked normal. Hinata was still confused, but nodded anyway. Okay. Naruto and Hinata walked into Ichiraku to find Sakura much too interested in how many directions she could push the pearl onion floating at the top of her bowl of miso soup. Sakura-chan. Naruto called out as he scanned the surrounding area. Where's Sasuke? Sakura put down her spoon and leaned her cheek against her fist. Not a clue, she replied with a shrug. Not that I really want to be around him anyway. But you were up on the roof with him trying to cheer me up, Naruto pointed out. Tsunade-sama was asking me and Hinata if we could go with her to your house. Then she saw Sasuke walking by and asked him too. I was trapped, Sakura sighed. Besides, making sure you were okay was more important. Naruto gave Sakura a small smile. Thanks. Sakura turned to him. Naruto. Yeah. I'm so sorry for. Sakura began. Naruto clapped a hand on his friend's shoulder. Hey, I forgave you already. You screwed up. It happens, he said with a shrug. I wasn't exactly thrilled that you did it, but I can understand why you did. It's okay. He gave Sakura a small smile to show he meant what he said. A tear rolled down Sakura's face. You're a good friend, Naruto-kun, she said as she smiled and wiped away the tear. Naruto's eyes widened at the addition of kun on the end of his name. Not a problem, he said with a broad grin. He rubbed his palms together. Now, he said, looking at Hinata, how about that ramen? Hinata giggled. Right. The next day Tsunade stood next to Sakura as she attempted to revive a fish from the brink of death. She frowned at the girl's lack of success. Focus, Sakura. You've done this already. This one's only 30 more seconds past heart failure. The green healing light surrounding Sakura's hands faded and disappeared. She let out a large puff of air. I just can't today, Tsunade-sama. I'm too distracted. Do you think your enemies are going to care about your personal problems? Tsunade scolded. Sakura hung her head. No, all right then. Now, focus. Sakura nodded and went back to curing the fish. In just a few seconds it was flapping all over the table. She smiled at her success and moved out of the way for Hinata. Tsunade picked up the first fish and handed it off to Nabiki, who had been standing in wait. Take that down to the pond in the north garden. Nabiki bowed. Hi, Tsunade-sama. As Nabiki walked off, Tsunade grabbed another near-death fish off a towel on the floor next to her and put it on the table. All right. Hinata, your turn. Hinata nodded. Just then Naruto walked into the room with a huge glass of milk in the crook of one arm, a bag of cookies in the other, and one cookie sticking out of his mouth. Everyone stared at him and he just grinned, his mouth still plugged up with the cookie. Hinata couldn't help herself. She started laughing. Tsunade sighed through her nose. Naruto, you made her lose her concentration, she tried her best to say without laughing. She failed. All right. I guess we can have a cookie break, she announced with a grin. Naruto set down the milk and the bag, and then ate the rest of the cookie that was in his mouth. After he washed it down with some of the milk, he grinned again. I knew you'd see it my way. Tsunade picked up the fish and walked off into the kitchen with it, returning a moment later. That one will be dinner, she said, gesturing behind her. She picked up a cookie and dunked it, then sat down on the couch with Naruto. You're doing extremely well, Sakura. You may be more talented than Shizune, she said with a smile. Sakura smiled. Thank you, Tsunade-sama. Which reminds me, you may have a chance to test out your new skills tomorrow, Tsunade informed her. Huh? Sakura questioned. I received a mission for your team today. I'll tell you the details tomorrow though, when I have all three of you here. Sakura winced at the obvious reference to Sasuke. Tsunade noticed Sakura's reaction and frowned. It still bothers you that much? Sakura sighed. Well, it's not like I hate him or anything. In fact, I still care about him, a lot. It's just that, every time he's near me I feel like I wanna run. I can't help it. I just keep seeing that look in his eyes from when he... She trailed off, knowing she didn't need to finish the sentence. Well, you're going to have to put all that aside for your mission, Tsunade informed her. I know, I can do that, Sakura promised. Good girl, Tsunade replied. She turned to Hinata. I want you on this mission too. But what about Shino and Kiba-kun? Hinata asked with confusion. Don't worry, you're not switching teams, but I want you to get more combat experience, and Shino is on a mission with his father at the moment. I also put Kiba on a mission with Guy's team, Tsunade explained. Oh, okay, Hinata finished with a smile. She looked over at Naruto. I'll be on a mission with Naruto-kun, she thought as she blushed nervously. Naruto noticed Hinata staring at him and felt his body heat up a bit. He swallowed and looked away, then suddenly stood up. Tsunade Carson, I need to talk to you alone for a minute. Tsunade cocked an eyebrow. Sure. She stood up and turned to Nabiki, who had just walked in the door. Nabiki, can you bring Hinata a new fish? Nabiki slumped a bit. Man, I just came back from the pond, she mock-whined with a small smile. Tsunade suppressed a laugh. Move. Nabiki sighed over-dramatically and trudged back out the door. Tsunade smiled and turned to Naruto. All right, let's go. Naruto nodded and headed into the dining room. When Naruto and Tsunade entered the room, they found Izumi setting the dinner table. Izumi, shoo, Tsunade commanded with an up and down waving motion of her hand. Izumi looked confused, but complied anyway. Hi, Tsunade-sama. Once Izumi was out of earshot, Tsunade and Naruto sat down at one end of the table. So, what's up? Tsunade asked as she rested her chin on her interlaced fingers. Naruto sighed. I need to talk to you about Hinata-chan. Tsunade's face broke into a wide smile. Ah, I see. What do you want to know? What we udone? Naruto thought in mild fear. Every time I'm around her I keep thinking how cute she is, he said with a slight grimace. And the problem is, I'm still not sure how I feel about her. We've been hanging out a lot lately and I like her a lot. But, I'm so confused. Tsunade laughed lightly. You're 14, kiddo. It's normal. What should I do? You know what I find interesting? Tsunade asked suddenly. Naruto looked confused. What? You claimed to love Sakura for so long and I've never seen you this flustered over her, Tsunade answered with an amused smile. At this, Naruto turned red as a tomato. No, why? Naruto shook his head. Tsunade's expression lost its amusement and became more gentle. Because Sakura was just a crush. I think Hinata is more than that to you, she explained. More? Naruto asked. But I'll let you figure that out on your own. It's not something that should be told to you by another person, Tsunade said as she gave him a gentle hug. Naruto sighed heavily. I have another question. Oh. Would it be alright if I changed my last name? Tsunade looked surprised for a moment but regained her composure quickly. I don't think that's such a good idea. Naruto frowned. Well, Namikaze is my real last name, isn't it? Tsunade nodded. Yes, but Minato gave you your mother's maiden name to protect you. I want that protection to continue. Naruto sighed in defeat. All right. Why don't we go back now? See how Hinata is doing with her fish. Okay, Naruto agreed. Hinata barely noticed when Naruto and Tsunade re-entered the room. She was too busy concentrating. Please, she thought. Beads of sweat rolled down her forehead as she pushed the healing chakra into the fish. After a few minutes of watching the girl struggle, Tsunade interrupted. Stop, Hinata, she said. Hinata looked ashamed as she stopped the flow of chakra. I'm sorry, Tsunade-sama, she said, bowing her head in shame. Tsunade walked over to Hinata. Hey, you did your best. She sighed in thought. In fact, I think we may need to change the jutsu a bit to suit the way you use your chakra. After a moment of thought she said, instead of blanketing the chakra, try pushing it through the tenketsu. Okay, Hinata replied, activated her Byakugan and proceeded to work on the same dead fish she had before. I can't fail, not in front of Naruto-kun. Hinata, you can't do anything more with that fish. I'll get you a new one, Tsunade said. Hinata was so intent on helping the fish that she didn't hear her sensei. The damage was all repaired, but the fish was still dead. Why isn't it working? She thought in frustration. Suddenly her eyes widened. She had an idea. Hinata, Tsunade repeated, intent on tapping the girl on the shoulder to snap her out of it. As she reached out, a white pulse of energy shot out from the fish. It started flapping. Hinata deactivated her Byakugan and smiled with pride. How? That shouldn't be possible, Tsunade asked, wide-eyed. Well, I just thought of how the hospital uses those paddles to revive people, so I put some of my body's electrical current into the chakra, Hinata explained with an embarrassed blush. This girl. Tsunade thought. Hinata, I want you to promise me that you'll never do that again, she said sternly. The smile fell from Hinata's face. She said in confusion. Hadn't she done a good job? Why? The body has a lot less electrical current than chakra. Reviving a fish is one thing. If you use that technique on a human being, you'll die, Tsunade said gravely. Hinata made a small gasp. I'm declaring that jutsu as forbidden. You can't use it and you will not teach it to anyone. Is that understood? Hinata's face showed her disappointment. Hi, Tsunade-sama. Even if you can't use it again, that was incredible, Hinata-chan. Naruto said suddenly, breaking through the gloomy atmosphere. Hinata looked up at her crush and smiled. Thank you, Naruto-kun. Tsunade smiled. All right then, aside from that, you should be able to use the normal healing jutsu just fine now. Hinata's smile widened. Well, it's 10 o'clock. I say we call it a night. I'll see you all here at 2 p.m. tomorrow. The teens nodded and left the house. As they walked along the small forest road, Naruto fell in step beside Hinata. Hinata-chan. He paused, realizing Sakura would hear what he was about to say. No, Sakura-chan. Could you walk on ahead? I need to talk to Hinata-chan. Sakura smiled as though she had an idea of what he was going to say. No problem. She put on a burst of speed. See you guys tomorrow, she called out over her shoulder. After Sakura was out of earshot, Naruto turned to Hinata and grabbed her hand. Can we sit for a sec? He said with a small blush. Hinata looked surprised. Sure. Naruto led her over to a fallen tree a few feet off the side of the road. As they sat down, he fought an urge to surpass Rock Lee in running speed. He was silent for a moment before looking up at the girl next to him. She was wearing an azure blue tank top and denim shorts that ended above the knee. The combination made his face feel hot. He swallowed and spoke. I'm not sure if I'm doing this right, but I need to tell you something, he finished in a small voice. Hinata suddenly felt nervous. Hi, she said as began chewing her bottom lip. Naruto saw her chewing her lip and was horrified when he realized he wanted to cover that lip. No, both lips, with his own. He quickly looked down to avoid staring at her mouth. He gulped. I think you're cute," he said. "I can't believe I actually said it," he thought, desperately trying to ignore the butterflies that were now head-butting the inside of his stomach. Hinata couldn't believe her ears. "Did he just say what I thought he?" She thought in shock. She was amazed that she was able to get out the next word. What? The bottom dropped out of Naruto's stomach. "Oh God, she wants me to repeat it," he thought in horror. "I think you're cute," he said with quite a bit more ease than the first time. Hinata's mouth dropped open. He did say it. Am I dreaming? She thought, scarcely believing her own ears. Tears of joy filled her eyes. Naruto's face took on a look of concern. Did I do something wrong? Hinata shook her head rapidly. No, I'm just happy, she replied, smiling. A smile slowly spread over Naruto's face. Without even thinking about it, he moved closer to her and wrapped his arms around her in a warm embrace. Hinata felt herself stop breathing for a moment. He's hugging me, in that way, she thought, barely managing to fight the urge to pass out. Well, it's true, Naruto said as he released the hug. Looking into her eyes, he suddenly felt a lot more bold. I do think you're cute. I also think you're fun and smart, and I know, I like you. Hinata could barely breathe.
Anno.
Naruto swallowed again. Would you like to be my girlfriend? He said with flaming red cheeks and a tightness in his throat. With eyes as wide as dinner plates, Hinata promptly passed out. Naruto caught the flushed girl as she fell backwards and rested her head in the crook of his right arm. Hinata-chan. Oi, he said as he shook her gently in an attempt to wake her up. I can't believe she just fainted like that, Naruto said as he sat there with her head resting in his arms, waiting for her to wake up. He felt very protective of her right then. As he reached down and began stroking her forehead, her closed eyelids crinkled. Oh no, I don't want to wake up yet, Hinata thought in despair as her eyes fluttered open. Those same eyes widened when she realized she was looking up into the gentle face of the boy she loved. Naruto-kun. Hey there, Naruto said softly. Hinata sat up faster than she ever had in her life. So it wasn't a dream. After a moment of silence, she managed to look at Naruto. I'm sorry I fainted. Naruto let out a small puff of air. I'm just glad you're okay, he replied. No, so what do you think? Hinata stiffened, feeling woozy again, but willed herself not to faint a second time. I would love to be your girlfriend, she replied, fighting the urge to pinch herself. Naruto smiled, most of his nervousness gone. I guess that makes me your boyfriend then, huh? He said as he moved over so he was sitting right next to her. Hinata smiled in pure joy.
Yeah.
So what do we do now? Naruto's breathing became strained again as he stared into the young Hyuga's two pearl-like eyes. His heart hammered in his chest and heat circulated throughout his entire body as he leaned forward and kissed her. Hinata's eyes widened for a second in surprise before she closed them and simply enjoyed the feeling of Naruto's lips pressing against her own. She felt a heat in her chest she had never known before. Nothing in the world existed except Naruto. Surprising even herself, she wrapped her arms around him. He took that as a cue and did the same. After what seemed like an eternity, Naruto broke the kiss and moved his face back a bit, wanting to judge her reaction. He saw that her eyes were closed and she had a dreamy look on her face. Hinata-chan. Hinata reluctantly opened her eyes. That was amazing, Naruto-kun, Hinata breathed. Naruto smiled. Yeah, it was. Naruto and Hinata stared at each other for a moment more before Naruto spoke. It's getting late. We should get going. Why, yeah, Hinata agreed reluctantly. They stood and Naruto held out a hand for his new girlfriend. She happily took it. As they walked along, they kept stealing glances at each other and smiling. Hinata had never felt more at peace in her life. She gave Naruto's hand a squeeze and leaned her head on his shoulder. The two walked like that the rest of the way home, ignoring the surprised and sometimes disgusted stares from onlookers. Only one thought was in Hinata's head as they neared her home. If this is a dream, I never want to wake up. Naruto yawned, sat up and scratched the back of his neck. Damn, what time is it? He thought as he turned his head toward the clock. 8 o'clock already. He put on his indoor slippers and shuffled off to the bathroom. As he gazed into the mirror, he studied his looks. I wonder what I'd look like with a ponytail, he thought as he pulled back the hair that was hanging down at the nape of his neck. A knock sounded on Naruto's bedroom door. Naruto-kun. Breakfast, yelled Nabikaze's voice. Hi. Naruto yelled back through the closed bathroom door. After he'd finished his morning routine, he got dressed and headed downstairs. As Izumi handed Naruto his bowl of breakfast-themed ramen, he looked up at Tsunade. Ne, Baa-chan. Tsunade flinched at the use of Naruto's nickname for her, but realized that it would probably take a while for him to stop using it completely. Do you think I'd look good with a ponytail? Tsunade choked a bit on her bite of sausage. What brought that on? She asked. Naruto shrugged. I dunno, maybe a new look to go with the new voice. You know what? I say go for it. I think it'll look nice, Tsunade answered with a wide smile. Naruto smiled and slurped up some of his ramen. I better just go ahead and tell her. If Hinata and me just show up holding hands, it'll be 10 times worse, he thought. After a few mouthfuls, he put his chopsticks on the table. Baach. Carson, if I tell you something, do you promise not to make fun of me? I'll try my best, Tsunade said honestly. Naruto took a deep breath. I asked Hinata to be my. For some reason he felt too embarrassed to say the word girlfriend, so he simply put up his pinky finger instead. Tsunade's mouth hung open for a few seconds. Oh my god, she said with a grin as she folded her arms. It's about damn time. I was starting to think you'd stay dense about her forever, she said with a laugh. Naruto looked a bit irked at her comment. Damn it, I knew she couldn't resist. Of course she accepted, Tsunade predicted. Naruto was still annoyed that she had laughed, but at least his mother hadn't teased him as badly as he thought she would. Yeah, he said with a small smile. Tsunade smiled broadly. So? She said with an eyebrow wiggled. Have you kissed her yet? Naruto's cheeks reddened. Baa-chan, he yelled indignantly. Tsunade chuckled. Seriously though, since you have a girlfriend now, I need to ask you a few, things, she said with some discomfort. Naruto gulped. He didn't like the sound of that. Tsunade let out a long puff of air. I suppose there's really no easy way to do this. How much do you know about sex? Naruto's eyes increased in size tenfold. He also stiffened and turned bright red. Do we have to talk about that? He said, barely getting the words out. I need to have an idea of what I'm dealing with. Tsunade sighed. Would it be easier if I just asked you yes or no questions? Naruto nodded his head rapidly. Okay, well, you obviously know the anatomical differences between the sexes, so we can skip that part. Do you know the basic way sex works? Naruto swallowed and nodded his head. Tsunade visibly relaxed and sighed. Thank God. Are there any questions you want to ask me? At the realization that the talk was much shorter than he had feared, Naruto relaxed a little. After his skin had regained a bit of its normal color, he spoke. He managed in a small voice. Tsunade scratched her temple. All right then, I just have one favor to ask you. Wait until you're at least 16 for this, and please only do it with a girl you love more than life itself. Sex with someone you don't love is empty and meaningless. Naruto seemed to consider this for a moment. Okay, he said with a small smile. Tsunade chuckled, partially from relief, and gave the boy a hug. Thank you. She sat back up. Anyway, let's finish breakfast. I have some paperwork I have to get to, or Shizune will never leave me alone about it, she finished with a grumble. Naruto nodded and the two resumed eating. Tsunade yawned and glanced up at the clock. 10 of. She looked down at the papers on her desk. Good thing I'm almost done with this. As if on cue, ninjas began to come through the doors at that very moment. Naruto and company filed in after about 5 minutes and got in the assignment line. Just as their turn came around, Hayashi barged into the office. Tsunade stiffened. Although she respected his abilities, she had never cared for the man. Hayashi. Hayashi looked over at Naruto and Hinata, who were holding hands, and glared. He turned his attention back to the fifth. I need to speak with you on an urgent matter, he said as he walked up to the assignment table. In private, he said in a low voice. Tsunade cocked an eyebrow and frowned. All right, but make it quick. I have assignments to hand out, she informed him as she stood and gestured for him to follow her. The two walked into a small office that branched off the assignment room. Once she shut the door, she sat down behind the desk at the back and waved a hand at the empty chair in front. So, what do I owe the pleasure of this visit, Hayashi-kun? She said in an insulting tone as Hayashi occupied the previously empty chair. Hayashi gritted his teeth at the insult, but bit his tongue. He hemmed. I came here to ask you about a rumor I heard this morning, but just coming here confirmed it, he said with a set jaw. Tsunade looked at the ceiling in irritation. Get to the point, kid. I don't have all day. Hayashi's frown deepened, but he controlled his temper. I want you to forbid your son from seeing Hinata. Oh, you do you? Tsunade replied as she folded her arms. This has nothing to do with him having been the Kyuubi's container. That boy is a bad influence. Tsunade was growing more irritated by the second. How so? She asked in a warning tone. He's rude, loud, and uncivilized. I don't want Hinata associating with him. Even more than that, I don't want him wandering around town, in public, holding her hand, Hayashi said as though the idea sickened him. Tsunade had had enough. She glared at him menacingly. Naruto is kind, brave, and a better person than you will ever be. And he may not be the most socially practiced person in the world, but at least he's not a pompous ass. Hayashi stood from his chair. How dare you, he said with balled fists. As far as I'm concerned, Naruto can date whomever he likes. Tsunade's hand shot forward and grabbed the front of Hayashi's outfit. She pulled him toward her so that she was inches from his face. Count yourself lucky that there are people beyond that door, she whispered with a dangerously sweet smile. Hayashi let out an angry breath as Tsunade released him. You have no right to command what rules I lay down for my child, he said angrily. I have every right. And be glad I don't involve myself further with your family's rules. Quite frankly, many of your traditions disgust me. Now get out of my sight, Tsunade commanded as she pointed at the door. Hayashi gritted his teeth and left the room. As he walked past Naruto and Hinata, he gave one final glare of anger before leaving. Damn her. Tsunade came from the small office and resumed her position at the assignment table. What did my father say? Hinata asked nervously. Tsunade smiled. Don't you worry about it. I straightened him out, she said with a wink. Hinata looked unsure, but nodded anyway. Now, what I have for you four is B rank. Tsunade handed Naruto a manila envelope. Give that to Kakashi. Unfortunately, thanks to Hinata's father, I don't have the time to explain the mission personally, she finished with a frown. Got it, Naruto replied as the four teens turned and walked away. Just as they were about to go out the door, they heard Tsunade's voice. Naruto, I almost forgot. Come back here for a sec, she said. The others looked at Naruto in question. He shrugged and walked back to his mother. Tsunade gestured for Naruto to come in close. I want you and Hinata in separate sleeping bags, she whispered. Naruto grimaced. What kind of pervert do you think I am? He hissed back to her. Tsunade smiled. I think you're a 14-year-old boy, that's what. Now get out of here, she said as she pointed toward the door with her head. Naruto swallowed and returned to his friends. What did Tsunade-sama want? Sakura asked. Naruto's face suddenly resembled a tomato. Nothing, he said quickly. Let's go. Kakashi raised his eyebrows at the contents of the mission assignment envelope, which he had just finished reading. Well, it looks like we are off to Gansu City. Sakura was instantly excited. The capital. Yup, Kakashi said as his eyes crinkled with his smile. Sakura jumped up and jabbed a fist into the air. Yatta. Sakura-chan. Hinata questioned, confused at her current teammate's reaction. It's a city, Hinata. Do you understand what that means? Sakura answered excitedly. Hinata shook her head. Dance clubs, 16-screen movie theaters, all the best clothing shops and karaoke bars. Sakura said with a happy twirl as she finished. Kakashi's eyes became more serious. Sakura, we are going there to work, not play. Naruto, who wasn't really interested in any of the things Sakura had mentioned, folded his arms and nodded his head with an affirmative, no-nonsense grunt. Sakura turned to her blonde comrade. They have gourmet ramen shops, she said, hoping she could tempt him. Naruto's eyes widened. Ramen, he said, suddenly giving Kakashi the same pitiful look Sakura had a moment before. Hinata giggled and Sasuke made a derisive grunt as he rolled his eyes. Kakashi sighed. Maybe we can stay a little after the mission. Yatta. Naruto and Sakura yelled in unison. Sasuke groaned and hung his head. What's our mission? We are to evict a gang that has moved in recently. Apparently they're too much for the city police to handle, Kakashi explained. Ninjas? Hinata asked. Well, they know a few techniques, but they're not a clan, Kakashi said with a shrug. Sasuke smirked. Heh, Godame gave something that simple a B rank. Kakashi frowned. Never assume your enemy is weaker than you. That kind of thinking will get you killed. Sasuke glared at his sensei. Kakashi cracked his knuckles, earning a disgusted grimace from Sakura. Now, go get your gear. I'll meet you by the city gates in 20 minutes. Hi! The teens shouted as they shot off in multiple directions. Naruto was a bit irritated that he was the last one to arrive. It couldn't be helped though. Tsunade's house was further from the gate than his apartment had been. Yo! He called in greeting. Hinata turned around at her boyfriend's voice. Naruto-kun, she said with a smile. Hey Hinata-chan, Naruto replied as he slipped his hand into hers. Eyebrows raised all around. Does this mean what I think it does? Sakura asked hopefully. Naruto nodded and blushed. Yeah, he said as he scratched the back of his neck nervously. Yatta. Sakura cheered. She gave Hinata a huge hug. It's about time. Congratulations. Hinata smiled shyly. Thank you. Sasuke gave a nod of approval. Nice work, Dobi. Naruto twitched. Can't you ever say something nice to me without adding an insult? Mitch, Sasuke remarked with a smirk. Naruto was about to make a retort when Kakashi interrupted. Ahem, we really do need to get going. It's a 4-day walk. The sun was beginning to fall lazily behind the horizon as Kakashi's team went about setting up their tents. Naruto, hand me that steak over there, Kakashi instructed. Naruto looked to where his sensei was pointing, grabbed the steak and handed it to him. He saw Hinata taking out her sleeping bag and suddenly Tsunade's words came back to him. I want you and Hinata in separate sleeping bags. Naruto's face took on a distinct crimson color as he shook his head in an attempt to rid himself of the heat building in his chest. All right, Kakashi said as he stood up from finishing the second tent. Sakura, Hinata, and Naruto, you take this tent. Sasuke and I will take the first one. The teens nodded and put their gear into their assigned tents. Naruto was having a hard time sleeping. He hadn't been on a mission in almost 3 months, thanks to various factors, and it was driving him crazy that he wouldn't see any action for at least 5 more days. He turned his head to his right. Hinata slept soundly, her chest rising and falling with each gentle breath. Naruto propped up his head on his right hand and just watched her sleep. It wasn't long before he found his breathing falling into her rhythm. His eyelids began to feel heavy and he fell into a peaceful slumber, Hinata having been the last thing he saw before he closed his eyes. Naruto-kun, wake up, Hinata said, gently shaking her boyfriend. Naruto opened his eyes to see Hinata staring down at him. The morning sunlight was pouring through the open tent flap behind her, giving her an ethereal glow. He found himself unable to move or speak, for fear of losing that moment. Naruto-kun, are you okay? Hinata asked with concern. Naruto blinked back his reverie and smiled. I'm fine. He yawned. Morning, Hinata-chan. Good morning, Naruto-kun. Kakashi-sensei is making breakfast, Hinata said, holding out her hand. Naruto happily took Hinata's hand. Great, I'm starved. Hinata and Naruto left the tent and found their seats around the campfire. Kakashi handed out bowls and everyone dug in. Sasuke was deep in thought as he ate his food. He'd been trying to think of something to say to Sakura, but nothing came to mind. I hate this. Is she ever going to be comfortable around me again? He sighed heavily, took his last bite of rice and left the group. Naruto was about to grab seconds when he saw his brother walking off into the woods. I wonder what's up, he thought. He turned to Hinata, who he'd been sitting next to. I'll be right back, he said, blushing as he gave her a kiss on the top of her head. He ignored Sakura's impish smile and headed in Sasuke's general direction. He's on his way to Gansu City. There are 4 others with him, including Kakashi and Sasuke. Orochimaru snorted. I have no more interest in that brat as a vessel. Naruto is my only concern now. He picked up a glass of water and took a sip. Did your mission go well? He asked Kabuto as a bead of sweat on the glass rolled downward and fell onto the table. Hi, Orochimaru-sama. He has agreed to retrieve Naruto for us. However, he also told me that he will only do it if we stay out of Akatsuki business, Kabuto replied. Orochimaru cocked an eyebrow in curiosity. Oh really? He put his glass back on the table. Well, I supposed we can comply, for a short period of time, he said with a contemptuous smile. Kabuto remarked with a smirk as he pushed his glasses higher on his nose. I'll inform him of your decision, he said with a half bow. Orochimaru nodded. Go, he commanded. Hi, Kabuto said just before walking away. Orochimaru rose from his chair and left the room as well. He walked down the hall a bit and opened a heavy steel door. He went inside and smiled cruelly at the 6 summoned creatures who lay still as death in their respective sealed cages. Everything is finally falling into place. Orochimaru-sama has agreed to your terms, Kabuto said with a tiny, barely respectful bow. Then I will leave in the morning. That is all, replied the man who stood in the shadows. Kabuto gritted his teeth a bit at the man's insolence, but bowed again anyway. Hi, Itachi-san. The air around the team had begun to get warmer, so much so that Naruto and Hinata now had their jackets tied around their waists. Why the hell is it so hot? Naruto complained. Kakashi, who had just finished putting his Jounin vest in his backpack, turned toward his subordinate. You kids are about to find out why this is called the Fire Country, he answered with a knowing smirk. Just when Naruto was at the point of wanting to remove his shirt, they came around a corner and his mouth simply fell open. The road they had been walking was now elevated above the ground by at least 400 feet, and underneath this bridge of rock was a field of fire. There were thin ribbons of magma visible segmenting the ground like organic veins. In between these veins were large vents which expelled hot steam, some of which nearly reaching half the height of the bridge. This vision of hell stretched on for a half-mile or so. From the team's right, a lone geyser shot its contents into the air, making the teens take an instinctive step backward. Sakura's eyes bugged out as she stared at the scene before her. That's an active volcano, she yelled with an incredulous expression as she jabbed a finger in the direction of the lava. Yup, Kakashi answered nonchalantly. Let's go, he said, and began walking. When he noticed his team was not following him, he turned around. Aren't you coming? That's an active volcano. Sakura yelled again as though Kakashi didn't have that knowledge. Kakashi cocked an eyebrow. And you're insane, Naruto replied, pointing at the Jounin. This volcano hasn't erupted in over 300 years. There's no danger, Kakashi answered plainly. The group looked at each other with uncertainty. I'm telling you it's perfectly safe, he said with impatience. Sasuke took a calming breath and took a few steps forward. The others followed suit. Before long they were all walking along the bridge. However, they were very tense the entire way across. Kakashi saw their trepidation and decided to distract them with a little history. When the first people to settle this land were looking for a place to build their home, they crossed this bridge on the way. They named it the Fire Country and then named the capital city to match the theme. He sighed wistfully. I haven't been to Gansu in 10 years. You kids will love it. Thoughts of the city, for the moment at least, pushed away their fears as they neared the end of the bridge. Kakashi pointed ahead to where the land became level again. There's the exit. He barely got out before 4 teenage blurs shot past him. He blinked and chuckled to himself. Well, at least they made up for lost time. Sakura could not have more resembled a deer caught in someone's headlights if she tried. She stared, bug-eyed and guppy-mouthed, at the city that had just become visible as they cleared the crest of the hill they had been climbing for the past half hour. The rest of the teens had similar, yet far less extreme expressions of amazement on their faces. Kakashi noted his team's collective reaction and his eyes crinkled into a smile. Well, now, I do believe I promised you a break once we got to the top. Sakura looked at her sensei as if he'd grown a second head. Are you crazy? Now that we're so close. Kakashi looked at the others. Anyone else suddenly have energy again? Naruto and Hinata sagged their shoulders and gave Kakashi a look that clearly said please, no more. Sasuke just shrugged as though he didn't care either way. All right then, We'll take a 15-minute break, Kakashi announced. Sakura instantly looked absolutely crestfallen. She shuffled over to where her teammates were now sitting and plopped down heavily on the nearest large rock. Naruto reached into his backpack and pulled out a small package. He tapped Hinata on the shoulder. "Ne, Hinata-chan, want one?" he offered, holding out a chocolate-covered butter cookie. Hinata smiled warmly. "Arigato, Naruto-kun," she said as she took the cookie from his hand. Naruto grabbed a cookie for himself and scooted over so he could lean against his girlfriend a bit as he ate. Hinata blushed heavily, but didn't feel the urge to pass out. She had begun to get used to Naruto's affections and was loving every single second of it. How did this happen? She asked herself in her mind. How did my dream come true? She glanced sideways at Naruto. Will I someday be able to tell him I love him as well? Sasuke looked over at Sakura. She was staring at the city with a longing expression, checking her watch every minute or so. "Sakura," he called. Sakura tensed a little at her friend's voice, but forced herself to look his way. "Why, yes. Damn it. She's still scared of me," Sasuke thought in frustration. Naruto looked at his brother and frowned. He knew why Sasuke was upset. He remembered his conversation with him in the woods a few days earlier. "Sasuke," Naruto called out just before seeing his target sitting in front of a small pond. Sasuke sighed at not being left alone. "Hey," he said without looking up. Naruto sat down next to Sasuke. "What's up?" Sasuke sighed and threw a pebble into the pond. "Nothing." Naruto frowned. "Is it Sakura-chan?" After a short pause, Sasuke gave in. "Yeah," he said as he picked up another pebble. "I don't have a lot of people I care about, Naruto. You, Sakura and Kakashi are just about it. I just can't stand the fact that one of the few people I fully trust no longer trusts me," he finished as the last of the ripples from his pebble dissipated. Naruto sighed in thought. "Just give her time, Nii-san. She'll come around," he said with small smile. For some reason, hearing Naruto use a family honoritive in place of his name relaxed him a bit. "Thanks," Sasuke said. "No problem," Naruto replied. "I hope I'm right, Sasuke," Naruto thought. "Sakura, are you ever going to stop jumping whenever I talk?" Sasuke asked sadly. Sakura winced a bit. I hope so. I just want you to know though, that I don't hate you. I just need a little more time to deal with everything." This perked up the raven-haired Uchiha a bit. "It's a start at least. Thank you." After a moment of thought, Sakura moved just a little closer to the boy her heart had grown to fear, and felt a little of that fear melt away. The streets were made up of cobblestones, there were lights and advertisements everywhere, and police roamed around instead of jounin. The buildings looked like the ones in their hometown, only much bigger, some of them topping out at 18 stories. Naruto and the other teens simply stared at the scene before them. "Hey, amazing," Naruto commented in awe. Kakashi smiled. "Now, before we find a place to stay, we need to speak with the mayor," he said as he unfolded a map. Naruto looked at Kakashi. "What's a mayor?" "Similar to a Hokage, although they usually aren't ninjas and they don't have absolute power," Kakashi answered as he traced a street on the map with his index finger. He looked up at the street signs. "This way," he announced and began walking. "How can a leader not have absolute power?" Sakura asked, her curiosity piqued. "They run under a system where the leader shares his power with a group of advisors. If a majority of the advisors don't agree on an issue, they rule against it. If they do agree, then it is passed along to the mayor and he has the final say over whether or not the decision of the advisors will go into effect," Kakashi said as he walked, occasionally pulling Sakura away from store windows. After Sakura had resumed walking, she frowned. "It sounds inefficient." "To a degree, but it gives the citizens a voice," Kakashi said as he looked up at the number of the building they had just come to. "Ah, here we are. We need to go to the 10th floor," he said as he walked toward the front entrance. Naruto and the others looked at each other. "Wouldn't it be faster if we jumped up?" Hinata asked. Kakashi shook his head. "We have to keep a low profile for now," he said, opening the front doors. Naruto stared at the panel of buttons that contained the one Kakashi had just pushed. "What's this?" he asked, gesturing at the handle-less doors in front of them. "An elevator." "Elevator?" Sasuke repeated. "Yes," Kakashi answered, sighing at their technological ignorance just as the doors opened by themselves. "Get in," he instructed. The teens looked unsure, but obeyed. The doors hissed shut and Kakashi pushed the button for the 10th floor. Naruto, Sakura, Sasuke, and Hinata were a little startled when the elevator began to move. It's basically a steel box raised up by heavy cables. Don't worry, it's perfectly safe, Kakashi assured them. The doors opened onto a floor with a lush, red runner carpet and doors peppering the long hallway. It's at the end of the hall, Kakashi informed. The mayor looked up when his secretary walked in. Yes, Ray. A Mr. Hatake Kakashi is here to see you, sir, the woman replied. The mayor smiled. Ah, very good. Show them in, Ray. The woman nodded with a smile. Yes, sir. She disappeared and came back a moment later with Kakashi and his team in tow. The mayor's face lit up. Ah, Kakashi, he said with an enigmatic grin. How long has it been? He asked as the men gave each other a polite bow. Kakashi smiled. 10 years, sir. The mayor moved back to his desk. Much too long. He pushed a button on his desk. Yes. Came his secretary's voice over a small speaker. Please bring in 2 extra chairs. Right away, sir. Just a moment later the secretary entered the room, dragging 2 cushy-looking office chairs behind her. She pushed them into place, gave the mayor's company a polite bow and left. She's wonderful. I don't know how I'd manage around here without her. He noticed his company was not sitting. Sit, please, he said with a smile. So what's the situation? Naruto asked with a firm expression as he sat down. The mayor cocked an eyebrow. Impatient, isn't he? He directed at Kakashi. The curse of youth, Kakashi said with an amused smile. The mayor chuckled warmly. I see you still have issues with your looks, he said, indicating the mask on Kakashi's face. Kakashi flinched as his team stared at him. There's a reason for this mask, he retorted. The mayor rolled his eyes and smiled. Yes, I remember, he said with a few dismissive waves of his hand. It doesn't make that reason any less ridiculous though. Kakashi, suddenly sensing his student's eyes boring into his body, decided to do away with any more potentially reputation-damaging small talk. Mayor Kurota, we really should get started, he said tersely. All right then, Kurota answered with mild disappointment. A few weeks ago some people who know a few jutsus moved into the city and took over one of the larger gangs. Unfortunately, my regular police forces have proven less than adequate. You will be heading to the north side of the city. The gang calls themselves the Yukai. We have very little information about them except that they are headed by a woman named Minako. Hopefully you will be able to find them before things escalate further. Kakashi nodded. Understood. We will do our best. He stood and bowed to Kurota. Kurota stood also. I have rooms for you at the hotel across the road. Please make sure they know you are my guests, he said as he bowed to the group. Hi. Thank you, sir, Kakashi said. The team stood and left the office. Naruto jogged a bit and got in step with Kakashi. So why do you wear the mask anyway? Kakashi twitched. Never you mind. The sliding shoji paper wall moved to the right and Sakura and Hinata stepped in. It's a nice room, Sakura commented with a smile. Hinata nodded in agreement, but glanced at the wall separating their room from the boys. I'm separated from Naruto-kun, she thought in disappointment. Are you sure? Said a male voice. Hi, Tokishi-san. They are definitely ninja, said a girl in a maid's outfit who was bowed in front of the man who'd spoken. The black-haired man curled his thumb and index finger around his chin in thought. All right then, keep an eye on them. I will inform Akuiko-sama. Hi, Tokishi-san, the girl said before getting up and leaving the room. Naruto laid down on his sleeping mat and stared at the soft glow of a lantern that outlined Hinata's form in the next room. From what he could tell, she was reading. He said as Hinata stood up and removed her jacket. His eyes widened to their ultimate capacity when he saw her also remove her shirt. He tried desperately to turn his eyes away. I'm not a pervert. I'm not a pervert, he chanted in his mind. He swallowed hard as she completed undressing and was slightly relieved when she slid on some pajamas. If she ever finds out I saw her naked shadow, she'll kill me, he thought nervously as he wiped away the small trickle of blood that had escaped his nose. Naruto rolled over onto his other side, trying as hard as he could to shut out the image of her body. Damn, I hate growing up. Hinata walked out of the door to her room and saw Naruto, Sasuke, and Kakashi already waiting. Good morning, everyone, she greeted as Naruto was busy stretching his arms over his head and yawning. Naruto jumped a bit at Hinata's voice and blushed furiously. Naruto-kun, are you alright? Hinata asked as she walked over and put a hand on the boy's forehead to check his temperature. Naruto suddenly felt a new warmth moving its way down the inside of his nose. Oh please, not again, he mentally begged. Kakashi cocked an eyebrow at seeing a small line of red come out of Naruto's nose just before the boy hurriedly wiped it away. He chuckled. Maybe I should loan him my book. He shook his head to rid himself of the idea. Nah, Tsunade-sama would rip me in half. He decided he'd better defuse the situation. He walked in between the two and spoke loudly. Ahem, we should get something to eat. We have a long day ahead of us. The team nodded and followed their sensei to the hotel exit. Sakura drummed her fingers on the tabletop as she watched her blonde-haired friend polish off his fourth bowl of ramen and order another. Naruto, we'd like to start the mission soon, she said with an irritated expression. The waitress set Naruto's order down in front of him. Sakura, this is the best ramen I've ever tasted. How can I leave before I'm stuffed solid? He answered, happily patting his stomach. Kakashi leaned over to Naruto. Make that your last bowl or I tell Hinata about that nosebleed earlier, he whispered in the boy's ear. Hinata wondered what Kakashi was telling Naruto. Her curiosity became even stronger when she saw her boyfriend turn a rather bright shade of scarlet. Naruto-kun. Naruto hurriedly finished his ramen and paid for the meal. Ready, he announced with a sheepish grin. As the team left the restaurant and headed toward the north side of town, they didn't notice the girl on the rooftops that followed their every move. Itachi stood on a radio tower on the outskirts of Gansu City. As the wind rustled his ebony black hair, he wished he had Kism with him. It would have made the search go much quicker. He scanned the streets closest to his perch. Seeing no one resembling his quarry, he shot off over the rooftops. Where are you? Kakashi stopped walking for a moment, looked around a bit and nodded. Okay, this looks like a good spot to start our search. Sakura and Sasuke, you two will question the locals. Get as much information as you can. He noticed a tentative look on Sakura's face. Problem, Sakura? Sakura replied, biting her lower lip. Finally she sighed. No, sensei. Kakashi nodded in approval. Good. Naruto, Hinata, you two will look for any buildings that the Yukai might consider using as a base of operations. Naruto and Hinata gave a sharp nod of obedience. I'll search on my own. We'll meet back here in 1 hour. If you find anything, don't engage the enemy. Tsunade-sama's assignment letter said that the gang has nearly 70 members, so we will be attacking as a group. Got it? His team nodded in understanding. All right then, dismissed. The two teams shot off in different directions. Kakashi sighed heavily and thought, I hope this mission doesn't turn out to be more than we're being paid for. It was difficult for Sakura to put aside the unease that working with Sasuke was giving her, but since she had no choice, she ignored her churning stomach as best she could. Let's start here, she said, pointing at a small convenience store. Relieved that Sakura didn't require any prodding to get her to work with him, Sasuke answered her. Okay. Sakura and Sasuke walked up to the counter. Excuse me. Yes, replied the mail store clerk with a smile. Do you know anything about the Yukai gang? Sakura asked quietly. Instantly the clerk's expression darkened. No, I don't. And if you know what's good for you, you won't ask about them again. Now, please leave before you get me in trouble, he said firmly. I hope everyone's not like that, Sakura said as they left the store. Sasuke sighed. All we can do is keep trying. Let's go. Sakura managed a small smile. Hi. How about that store? Sasuke offered, pointing at a ramen shop. Okay, Sakura agreed. Thank God Naruto's not with us. We'd never get out of there, she thought with a grimace. Naruto landed neatly on a fire escape and Hinata jumped up behind him. He scanned the alley below and, not finding anything, leapt to the roof across the way. As Hinata followed Naruto, she got the distinct feeling someone was watching them. She shot ahead so that she was jumping in sync with him. Naruto-kun, there's someone behind us. Are you sure? Naruto asked as his feet landed on a roof access housing just before his next jump. Byakugan, Hinata whispered. Using her now nearly 360-degree vision, she looked behind them. Hi, one girl. I think she's been there for a while now. The girl behind the two Konoha ninjas frowned when she saw the short-haired girl move into cinch with her partner. Have I been spotted? She wondered. The girl saw the pair drop out of sight into an alley for a moment, then come right back out again and continue along the roofs. What the hell? She thought in confusion. She landed on the edge of the building and was about to follow her targets onto the next one when the boy came flying at her from below and delivered a kick to her midriff. Oof! Naruto jumped after the girl when she flew backwards onto the roof from the force of his kick. The Koge Bunshin that had been running with Hinata puffed out of existence and she quickly doubled back. The girl stood up, breathing heavily, and ran at Naruto and Hinata, pulling out a wakizashi as she did so. Naruto put his hands together in his favorite seal, Koge Bunshin no Jutsu. Instantly, 5 more Narutos appeared around the girl in a circle. The girl's eyes went wide when her number of enemies suddenly tripled. What the hell jutsu is that? She thought as the copies of the boy rushed her. She held her sword above her head and put her left hand and forearm in a taijutsu pose. Danshingu Kei's no Jutsu, she called out. A swirl of chakra-embedded wind pushed her about 2 feet into the air. Her feet pointed and the chakra began to spin her at a dizzying rate. With the grace of figure skater, she neatly sliced through all the bunshins in the span of a second. Unfortunately for her, as she was spinning, she failed to notice the real Naruto above her. He dropped out of the sky and executed a half-round house kick, connecting his foot with her face. She went flying backwards, and then skidded along the ground for a good 8 feet before stopping. Naruto landed as Hinata ran towards the girl, meaning to attack when she saw something that made her stomach turn to cement. Naruto ran to where his opponent lay. Hinata-chan, why'd you stop? Biting her lower lip, Hinata simply pointed at her reason. Naruto swallowed hard at the sight that met his eyes. The girl's mouth was oozing blood, her arm was bent in a very unnatural way, and sticking out of her ribcage was what appeared to be a long metal pole, probably leftover from an old roof sign. Blood coated the entire length of it, and even more of the red liquid came from the hole in her chest. He sat down hard on the rooftop, nearly losing his balance as he did so. Can you do anything for her? He asked in a hollow voice. Squeezing her eyes shut in regret, Hinata shook her head. Suddenly the girl coughed loudly, choking up blood. She opened her eyes and looked over at the boy who was staring at her dying body in disbelief. How did you? She asked dumbly before closing her eyes again for the last time. Hinata looked over at Naruto. He was pale and his mouth formed an O of shock. Naruto-kun? Hinata asked in concern. After a moment of silence, Naruto spoke. I didn't mean to, I just wanted her down, so we could question her. Hinata, not knowing what to say, simply curled her fingers around Naruto's hand. I've never killed anyone before, Naruto said as tears filled his eyes. Naruto-kun? Hinata said as her own eyes misted over. She pulled the stunned boy into a comforting hug. A few tears fell down his face as Naruto sank into Hinata's arms. He opened his eyes and stared at the face of the girl he had killed. She couldn't have been more than 12 years old. I'm sorry, he thought. Hinata took a moment to glance at her watch. We're late. We should go, she said gently. Naruto sighed and reluctantly pulled away from the sanctuary that was his girlfriend's embrace. He nodded and wiped his eyes. Hinata stood and Naruto picked up the girl's broken body. The friction of the pole against her insides made a sickening sound as he pulled her off of it. We'll take her to the police station first. Hinata nodded. Okay. They took a few steps. Naruto-kun, maybe I should take her, she offered. Naruto shook his head. No, I'll do it, he replied quietly. As Naruto walked past Hinata, she could have sworn he looked older, tired. She sighed and followed him as he headed toward the police station. Kakashi, Sasuke, and Sakura watched the sinking sun with a mixture of irritation and worry. Where the hell are they? Sasuke asked in his mind as a strong wind kicked up a few papers scattered along the street. Sakura turned her head to her sensei. Should we go look for them? She asked, biting her lower lip. Kakashi sighed. We'll give them another 15 minutes. If they're not back by that time, I'll go, he replied calmly as he turned another page in his book. Sakura nodded, but somehow she felt that it would not be so simple. Please, Tsunade-sama. Tenten begged. As I told you at Naruto's party, I simply don't have the time to take on another student, Tsunade answered with a sigh. Just while they're gone then. That's not enough time to teach you much of anything, Tsunade said with a frown. I'm already an expert in 27 weapons. A katana shouldn't be that difficult, Ten rebutted in a last-ditch effort to get the fifth to agree. Tsunade sighed in defeat. All right. Ignoring the utterly gleeful expression in Ten's eyes, she added, but you still won't learn much from me. I didn't get very far in my katana training. Why? Tsunade smirked. I never did have much use for any weapon besides my fists. The brunette-haired chief of police looked up from instructing the rookie in front of her when she heard the front doors open. 2 teenagers entered the building. Well, 2 teenagers and a corpse. She ran to the strange group at once. What happened? She asked, looking at the girl in alarm. Naruto looked down and stayed silent. We're ninjas from Konoha, Hinata spoke up. Can someone take her from him? She said with a nod in Naruto's direction. The chief frowned in thought, not sure if she could trust them. Finally, she nodded in agreement. All right. She turned her head to the rookie she had been instructing a moment ago. Higurashi, take this poor kid to the morgue, she commanded grimly. The blonde rookie cringed. Hi, Imiko-san. He got up from his desk and gingerly took the girl from Naruto's arms. All right, you two, follow me, Imiko instructed as Higurashi carried the girl away. Hinata nodded and, putting her hand in Naruto's, followed Imiko into her office. Imiko closed the door behind them and sat down heavily into her chair. Now, what happened? She asked sternly as she waved a hand at the chairs in front of her desk. Hinata and Naruto took the cue and sat down. Seeing her boyfriend wasn't in the mood for talking, Hinata took the initiative. We were hired by Mayor Kurota to eliminate the Yukai gang. I remember Tate saying something about that. Please continue. We were conducting a search of the area they were suspected to be in when I noticed we were being followed. She said with a quick glance at Naruto. Naruto-kun ambushed her and she fought back. He kicked her and when she landed she fell on a metal sign pole. She finished with a grimace and a swallow as she noticed Naruto grit his teeth. Imiko blew out a long puff of air. I see. Naruto-kun didn't mean to kill her. It was an accident. He didn't know the pole was there, Hinata added, becoming louder and a little squeaky near the end of her sentence, her eyes begging Imiko to believe her. Suddenly, Naruto's fist slammed down on the desk, making both girls jump. He hung his head so that his hair covered his eyes. I'm sorry. She wasn't even. He said as 2 fresh tears moistened his cheeks. Hinata frowned sadly. Naruto-kun. She wasn't even our age. We don't even know if she was really an enemy, Naruto continued, wiping the wetness from his face. It was an accident, Naruto-kun, Hinata said, offering the only comfort she could think of at the moment. Naruto frowned. Her family won't care about that, he said sadly. Hinata, not knowing what else to say, put her arms around the boy she loved. A knock sounded on the door. Yes? Imiko asked. The door opened and Higurashi poked his head in. We have a positive I.D on that girl. All right. Imiko stood and looked at Naruto and Hinata. I'll be back in a moment, she said as she placed a comforting hand on Hinata's shoulder. Imiko walked outside the office, closing the door behind her. Hinata relaxed a bit, realizing that Imiko's actions indicated that she believed them. She watched the 2 shadows in the frosted glass window of the door with a nervous tension that threatened to make her sick to her stomach. Imiko came back after roughly 2 minutes and retook her seat. She had a short stack of papers in her hands. Her name was Kotsura. And you can relax, Naruto. She had been arrested several times for crimes relating to the Yukai gang. Naruto sighed with partial relief. Thank you, he said, brightening a bit. It was obvious, however, that he still hadn't completely recovered from the whole experience. Hinata gripped Naruto's hand. No, our sensei is expecting us. May we go now? She asked. Imiko put a curled, thoughtful index finger to her chin. I suppose I've gotten all I need from you. Go ahead, she said in a serious tone of voice. Thank you, Hinata said with a polite bow. She turned to Naruto. See, come on, she said with a warm smile. Naruto nodded and rose from his seat.
Yeah.
Naruto and Hinata left the police station in silence. As they leapt up to the rooftops, Hinata prayed that Naruto was truly as stable as he seemed. Kakashi landed on the platform encircling the water tower in front of him. As he peered out over the streets, he saw two dots out of the corner of his eye, moving fast. Turning his head so he could see the dots more clearly, he realized it was Naruto and Hinata racing along the tops of the buildings. He jumped off in their direction. "Where have you two been?" he said with concern once he reached their position. Hinata and Naruto stopped moving. After a moment of catching their breath, Naruto spoke up. "I'm sorry, we ran into an enemy," he explained. Kakashi frowned when Naruto didn't continue, and, realizing he wasn't going to get out of a full explanation, Naruto sighed. "We were being followed by a girl. I tried to catch her for information, but I screwed up. She fell on a sign pole and died. We just got back from giving the body to the police station," he finished quietly. Kakashi looked like he understood more than he should have. "She was your first kill, wasn't she?" Naruto's face snapped upwards, his expression showing his shock. "How did you know?" Just the way you said it," Kakashi answered as he clapped a hand on the boy's shoulder. "It shakes everyone up a little the first time, even if they don't show it. Unfortunately, death is a fact of life in our line of work." Naruto nodded. "Yeah, but I didn't know she was an enemy till about 10 minutes ago. For all I knew, she was just curious and defended herself when I attacked," he said solemnly. Kakashi sighed. "That is an even more unfortunate result of being a ninja. We aren't infallible. We do make mistakes, and sometimes an innocent dies from those mistakes," Kakashi said, closing his eyes and thinking of Obito as he finished. Naruto felt a small amount of sadness when he realized his sensei was speaking from experience. "Are we gonna look around some more?" he asked, hoping to change the subject. Kakashi shook his head. "Not right now. We could all use something in our stomachs. And I suspect you need some time to adjust to what happened." Naruto nodded, grateful that Kakashi was so perceptive. "Did Sasuke and Sakura-chan find out anything?" he asked as they began to head back to the hotel. Kakashi's eye crinkled into a frown. "No, it seems the residents are too afraid to talk. We'll just have to find the gang on our own. Be gentle with it. It's older than me," Tsunade warned as she handed Tenten a rather worn-looking shinai. Tenten frowned. "I have to practice with a pinchy stick." "Why?" she asked, sounding insulted. Tsunade laughed a bit at the girl's arrogance as it reminded her so much of her own at that age. "Because it saves me from having to waste chakra healing you." Tenten was about to make a retort when Jiraya burst into the room. Tsunade's eyes widened. "Jiraya!" She noticed the panicked look on his face. "What's wrong?" she demanded, knowing Jiraya didn't show panic very often. "I just got word from my network," the aging Sannin said in between gasps for air. "Orochimaru has sent Itachi to capture Naruto." "What?" Tsunade screeched, grabbing Jiraya's shoulders hard enough to make him wince. "You have to send an Anbu squad immediately." Now Tsunade was beginning to panic. I can't. They're all away on missions. The Jounins too." She suddenly looked like she had an idea. You have to go," she said loudly. "I don't have a team." Jiraya replied just as loudly. Tsunade's gaze immediately turned to Tenten. "Tenten, go get Lee and Neji. I want you all back here yesterday." The young weapons expert looked startled for less than a second. "Hi," she confirmed just before she disappeared from sight. Tsunade's stomach tied itself into an unheard of number of knots as she waited for Tenten to return. Naruto made sure to keep himself turned the opposite direction from Hinata and Sakura's room as he lay in his bed. Even though his conscience was managing to win, his hormones were screaming at him to peep. Finally, he couldn't take it anymore. He stood from his bed and marched himself to the bathroom, which had a full-length mirror on the inside of the door. "I'm gonna get this out of my system if I have to die of blood loss to do it," he thought with determination. Naruto closed the door and stood in front of the mirror. He let out a calming breath and put his hands into the seal for henge. "Henge," he said just before turning into the buxom blonde that was the trademark of his sexy no jutsu. In less than 2 seconds, he had a nosebleed that knocked him over onto the edge of the tub. "Damn it!" He got back up and wiped his nose. "Henge," he yelled again, gaining him the same blood bitch slap. He gritted his teeth. I will beat this. He put his hands into the seal again. Henge. Kakashi knocked on the bathroom door for the second time. Naruto, other people need to use the bathroom, he said flatly. Naruto barely heard the voice that was calling out to him through the haze in his mind. I musta dozed off. He lifted his head up from the floor, which turned out to be a bad idea as a crushing headache came over him. After closing his eyes for a moment, he suddenly remembered what he'd been doing and that there was a good amount of blood all over the front of his nightshirt. Shit! He cursed under his breath. If Kakashi-sensei sees this, I'll have to explain everything. He hissed as he forced himself to deal with the headache and shakily got to his feet. The instant he was standing straight up, a wave of dizziness swept over him and he fell to the floor, unconscious. Hearing a loud crash, both Kakashi and Sasuke became worried. Naruto! No answer. Naruto! Sasuke yelled. He took out a kunai, jammed it into the crack between the frame and the door and snapped it sideways. The wood around the bolt shattered as Hinata and Sakura came running into the room, obviously wondering what was wrong. Sasuke-kun, what? Sakura questioned as Sasuke swung the bathroom door open. When Hinata saw Naruto lying on the floor with blood all over him, not to mention a small amount on the floor and walls, her eyes filled with tears. Naruto-kun, she yelled as she shoved her way past a stunned Kakashi. She fell down next to Naruto and activated her Byakugan. After a moment, she let her eyes return to normal and looked up at the others with confusion. I don't understand. All he has is a bump on the head. There's no wounds and no internal bleeding, she reported. Kakashi mused in concern. Will he be all right? I think so, Hinata replied with uncertainty. All right then, Sasuke, you bring Naruto to his bed, as an afterthought he added, and put a clean shirt on him. He turned to Sakura. Can you handle cleaning the mess in here? He asked, pointing to the bathroom. Sakura grimaced, but agreed. Hi, Kakashi-sensei. Hinata, you help Sasuke. I'll go explain all the noise to the front desk, Kakashi informed the shy girl. As Kakashi walked off, Hinata looked in Naruto's bag for a new shirt. What could have happened? She wondered in her mind. Hinata and Kakashi sat near Naruto as he slept, each reading their respective books, although Hinata's was much less racy. She glanced over at the boy for what felt like the 100th time. Kakashi-sensei. Kakashi looked up from his book. Yes. Why hasn't he woken up yet? Shouldn't the red chakra have healed him by now? Hinata asked with worry. Kakashi frowned in thought. Yes, it should have. I don't understand it either. Hinata bit her lower lip. Should we take him to the hospital after all? Kakashi shook his head. No, his color has gotten much better. I think he'll be fine. Although I have to say that I'm very curious as to how he lost enough blood to make him pass out with no obvious injuries. Hinata replied softly. She heard a soft groan to her left. Naruto-kun, she exclaimed as she rushed to her boyfriend's side. His head turned slightly in her direction and his eyes slowly opened. Hinata-chan. Naruto said weakly. He put his hand to his head. I feel like I got stepped on by Gama Bunter. Suddenly his eyes snapped wide. I can explain, he said frantically. Kakashi cocked an eyebrow. Please do, he answered calmly. I. He stammered, looking back and forth between Hinata and Kakashi. Hinata-chan, I'm sorry, but can you leave the room for a minute? It's kind of embarrassing, he said with a small grimace. Hinata cocked her head to the side in confusion, but nodded. Okay, I'll be right outside if you need me, she said as she gave him a chaste kiss on his forehead. After Hinata closed the door, Kakashi turned to his student and gave him an expectant look. I'm waiting. Naruto cleared his throat. It's kinda about that nosebleed you saw, he said with a slight redness to his cheeks. Kakashi's eyebrows raised. You don't mean to tell me that all that blood was from? He said with his mouth agape. Naruto gulped. Yeah. Kakashi's face was incredulous. How the hell? Though maybe if I saw a naked woman enough then, I wouldn't get them anymore, Naruto answered while staring at the floor. Kakashi pointed at Naruto. Why, you had a naked woman in here, he said with loudly whispered shock. No. Naruto answered. At seeing the uncertainty on Kakashi's face, he stood up, took a deep breath and put his hands into the familiar seal. Henge. Kakashi's mouth dropped open at the model-worthy naked woman who now stood before him. After a moment he regained his senses. Naruto, please, drop that henge, he said as he covered his eyes. What's the matter? Female Naruto asked, confused at her sensei's reaction. Just do it. Kakashi commanded. Naruto frowned and released the jutsu. Okay, clear. Kakashi sighed and put his hand down. Naruto, you shouldn't do that henge. Why? Naruto asked in confusion. He had been expecting the same reaction he had gotten from other adult males in the past, especially since he knew Kakashi was a closet pervert. Because you're only 14, that's why. You may not really be female and you may not actually be naked, but it still invokes lust in adult men and that is wrong, Kakashi said seriously. Naruto frowned. He'd never thought of it that way. Naruto, tell me you haven't done that in front of Jiraiya-sama? Kakashi asked with a sick feeling in his stomach. Naruto winced in response. Yeah, I had to show him to get him to train me. Kakashi sighed as he slouched and put his head in his hands. Promise me you won't show that jutsu to any more adults. Naruto frowned. What about when I turn 16? Kakashi grinned. Then you can make as many nosebleeds as you want, he said with a chuckle. Naruto grinned. I don't understand how you made your own nose bleed though. The mirror, Naruto answered quietly. A look of understanding came over Kakashi's face. Oh! After a moment he burst out laughing. Naruto gritted his teeth. It's not funny. Kakashi only laughed harder. After he managed to stop, his face once again became calm. Naruto, you do realize the whole nosebleed thing is normal, right? Yeah, Naruto answered reluctantly. Well, you can't just desensitize yourself to the female figure. At seeing Naruto's crestfallen expression he added, it does happen less as you get older though, Kakashi said with a reassuring smile. Really? Kakashi cocked an eyebrow and held up his beloved book. Hey, if I was lying, do you honestly think I could read this in public? Naruto laughed. Where's Sasuke and Sakura-chan? They're out patrolling, Kakashi replied as he worked some of the kinks out of his neck. Naruto opened the door. Hinata-chan, you can come in now. Hinata looked at Naruto and smiled. Okay. As the two walked back into the room, Kakashi stood up. Well then, why don't we do some searching of our own? Naruto nodded. NM. The cool morning air made Naruto feel a little better. I hope we find something soon. I'm getting hungry. Kakashi smiled at the way Naruto and Hinata jumped in unison. It reminded him of the way he and Rin had. No, that was an old dream, now long gone. He sighed sadly and pushed on forward. He suddenly noticed two figures bounding over the rooftops a few hundred yards in front of them. Ah, there they are, he informed his current company. Naruto squinted against the bright Tenem sunshine to see what his sensei was talking about. At realizing the two dots were Sakura and Sasuke, he smiled. When they were within earshot, Naruto called out to them, Sasuke, Sakura-chan. Sakura turned her head to look behind her when she heard the voice that had yelled her name. Sasuke-kun, it's Naruto, she informed him, stopping on the next roof. Sasuke stopped a few feet after Sakura and the two headed back to the rest of their team. Naruto, you okay? Sasuke asked. What happened to him? He asked Kakashi. Naruto grimaced and looked pleadingly at the Jounin. Kakashi waved his hand in a reassuring manner. Naruto already made his report to me on this, and since it's a private matter, I'll let him decide whether or not to tell you. Naruto sighed in relief, although it was short-lived as his brother immediately turned to him. Well, Sasuke said expectantly with a scowl on his face. Come on, Sasuke, it's private, Naruto replied. Sasuke's scowl deepened and he sighed heavily. Are you in danger? Naruto shook his head. Is there a chance of it happening again? Naruto gave the same answer as before. All right then, let's get back to the mission. Naruto dropped his head in relief. Thank God. If I had to explain that to him, he'd blackmail me with it for life. The clock on the building they had just passed struck 11 and Naruto yawned. Ne, Hinata-chan. Hinata turned her head to look at him. What time were we supposed to meet up with the others again? Naruto asked, stifling another yawn. 11:30. We'd better head back, Hinata answered. Naruto nodded gratefully. They really hadn't rested since they started their search. Not far from their rendezvous point, Naruto noticed a small group of figures entering a boarded-up apartment building. "Hinata-chan, look," he said as he stopped on a roof and pointed downward. Hinata looked at the building just in time to see the last of the group Naruto had spotted climb through a wide gap in the boards. Byakugan. Her now enhanced vision let her know that the pair had found what they were looking for. "There's at least 30 people inside. I think we've found them," she said with a satisfied smile. Naruto nodded. "We'd better tell Kakashi-sensei." Hinata responded. The two teens headed back to the hotel. Itachi landed on the roof of the building across from where Team Kakashi's were staying. He smirked in satisfaction as he watched Naruto and Hinata enter the large hotel. "Found you," he thought. "Now I just need the right opportunity to strike." He moved back from the edge and folded his arms across his chest. "Soon, Naruto, we shall see if Orochimaru has truly succeeded in correcting the mistake he made 14 years ago," he whispered in cruel curiosity. Kakashi nodded in approval as Naruto and Hinata finished their report. "All right then, we'll attack tomorrow night. For now, I want all of you to get some sleep." The team nodded, then Sakura and Hinata left the room. Kakashi went to use the bathroom and Naruto and Sasuke sat down on their beds. Naruto watched Hinata's shadow in the soft glow of her lantern, making sure to remember to turn away if she stood up. His gaze drifted for a moment to the tatami mats covering the floor and he suddenly had an idea. He stood up and grabbed the edge of one of the mats on the far side of the room. "What are you doing, Dobi?" Sasuke asked in confusion as he watched his brother lift up the edge of the mat. "Putting up a privacy wall," Naruto replied without stopping his work. Confusion spread over Sasuke's face, which was quickly replaced by amused understanding. "Don't want to risk seeing Hinata again, huh?" Naruto stopped moving, made a strange sound and blushed. "Yeah," he said quickly without looking at Sasuke, then continued on with his task. Sasuke snickered, earning him a murderous glare from Naruto. "And how are you going to explain the mat if she wakes up before us and sees it?" Naruto gritted his teeth. He hadn't thought about that. "I'll set the alarm for 10 minutes early," he grumbled as he finished settling the mat into place. "Heh," Sasuke said with a smirk before laying down. Naruto frowned and sat down on the edge of his bed. He reached over to his nightstand and picked up the small alarm clock, setting it to 6:50 am. It was at that moment that Kakashi came waltzing back in from the bathroom. He stopped short at seeing the tatami mat on the divider wall to the two rooms. It didn't take him long to figure out its purpose, however. He cocked an eyebrow, shrugged and got into his bed. Naruto sighed in relief at not having been asked any more uncomfortable questions. He let his blonde head hit the pillow and fell into an uneasy sleep. Tenten and Neji breathed heavily as they tried their best to keep up with the blurs of speed that were Lee and Jiraya. Twice now, they had felt the shame of being babied when Jiraya and Lee had to slow down to make sure they weren't left behind, and they were determined not to hold back the mission any further. Jiraya looked behind him at his slower subordinates. He lessened his pace just a little and Lee followed suit. Luckily, the two behind them seemed to not notice the drop in speed. "They're probably too tired to care," Jiraya thought just as they came to the volcano bridge. Neji's immediate reaction to seeing the lake of lava under their intended path was to skid to a halt. Jiraya stopped when he realized he was missing a team member and turned around. "Oi, Neji, what are you just standing there for?" he bellowed. When he didn't get an answer, he frowned in irritation and ran back to the bridge entrance. "Neji, did you hear me?" he said, finishing softly as he got a good look at the boy's face. Neji's eyes, if possible, looked even more ghostly than normal, and his entire face was frozen in terror. "Neji!" Jiraiya said loudly as he waved a hand in front of Neji's face. "Neji-kun!" Tenten yelled as soon as she reached his position. "Do you know what's going on here?" Jiraiya asked quickly. Tenten nodded. "I think so. We need to get him out of sight of the lava," she instructed as she put Neji's arm over her shoulder. Lee got the idea and took the other side. Once they were roughly 100 feet from the bridge, they set Neji down. Tenten took out her canteen, poured out some water onto her cupped hand and splashed Neji in the face. She was relieved to see him immediately come out of his daze. "Are you okay, Neji-kun?" Neji closed his eyes for a moment. When he reopened them, he sighed angrily. "Yes. Would you two mind telling me what just happened?" Jiraya said with his arms folded across his chest. Neji and Tenten looked at each other, and then Neji turned his gaze toward his captain. "I'm afraid of fire," he said, his voice dripping with self-loathing. Both Lee and Jiraya's eyes widened in surprise and confusion. "But, I've seen you fight enemies who use fire jutsu," Lee said. "I've worked very hard to control it. I spend at least 20 minutes a day sitting in front of a lit fireplace," Neji replied in an even tone. "I thought I had gotten to a point where I could completely control my fear," he said angrily. Jiraya sighed. "I see, unfortunately, we don't have time to wait for you to overcome this fear. I'm afraid you'll have to return to the village." Neji nodded. "Understood." He rose to his feet. "Neji-kun, are you sure you're okay with this?" Her brow was furrowed in concern. Tenten knew the idea of having to quit a mission would be highly detrimental to her friend's pride. "If you are forced to help me across the bridge, the mission will be compromised. It's the only logical thing to do," Neji replied solemnly. "All right then, we'll see you when we get back," Lee said with a hearty clap to Neji's shoulder. Neji simply nodded and ran off in the direction they had come from. Tenten bit her lower lip as the remaining team members once again set off for Gansu.
"I'm sorry, Nei-kun."
As the night sky began to lighten, Itachi watched with mild interest as his quarry surrounded an old building. He shifted his weight onto his left foot and pushed away the strand of hair that had been waving in his face for the last minute. The coming battle should separate Naruto from Kakashi at some point. The time has come. 39 now, Hinata reported in reference to the number of people inside the building. Kakashi nodded in approval. "It seems we picked a good time for this." He looked around the area again for a moment. "All right, Naruto, Hinata, and I will go in from the roof level. Sasuke and Sakura, I want you stationed on the east and west sides of the building. You're to keep anyone from escaping the area." He noticed Sakura tense up and grit her teeth. "Is there a problem, Sakura?" The girl in question quickly shook her head, embarrassed that she had been caught looking uncomfortable. "All right then, let's move out," he commanded as he handed out their radio headsets. Naruto, Hinata, and Kakashi jumped over to the roof of the gang's hideout. As Kakashi turned the knob to open the door, Sasuke's voice crackled over his headset. "Sasuke, in position." After a second, Sakura chimed in. "Sakura, in position." Kakashi nodded. "Roger," and nearly pulled open the door before thinking better of it. "Hinata, you're Byakugan." Hinata nodded and aimed her enhanced vision at the door. "It's wired to explode." Kakashi frowned. "What kind of device is it?" "Contact point," Hinata answered. Can you cut the wires with Juken?" Kakashi asked. Hinata chewed her lower lip and released her Byakugan. I don't know. Nejini-san is better at Juken than me." Naruto put a gentle hand on his girlfriend's shoulder. "I believe in you, Hinata-chan," he said with a winning smile. Her cheeks flushed pink, but she smiled gratefully. "Thank you, Naruto-kun." She gave him a quick peck on the lips. Naruto blushed a little as Hinata turned around to face the door and reactivated her Byakugan. She swallowed and raised her hand, causing it to glow just before bringing it down in a cutting motion near the door's latch. She saw the wires separate and she nodded in satisfaction. After making 2 more cuts at points around the edge of the doorframe, she turned around and smiled at her companions. "It's safe now." Naruto grinned. "Good job," he said, giving her a gentle squeeze. "Follow me. Hinata, you take point," Kakashi said quietly as he opened the door and went inside. As Naruto and the others descended the staircase, he felt uneasy. "Calm down, Naruto. They're all bad guys. You can't make a mistake here." Hinata noticed Naruto's expression and frowned. "I wonder if he's thinking about that girl." They came close to the end of the stairs. She suddenly held out her arm and put her finger to her lips. "There are 2 guards pacing the room," she whispered. Kakashi looked at Naruto. "Take the one on the right. I'll take the other." Naruto nodded and the 2 shot forward from the stairwell opening. Kakashi knife-chopped his target in back of the neck, while Naruto simply punched his opponent dead in the face. Kakashi sighed as Naruto gently laid the woman he had just knocked out on the floor. "Couldn't you practice at least a little finesse?" Naruto simply grinned. "Not my style," he replied, causing his sensei to sigh again and shake his head. Hinata looked through the floor below them. 6 on the floor below us, she informed the rest of the team. Kakashi pulled out a kunai. All right, from here on in, we fight. Lee sped over the rooftops at a breakneck speed. Sakura-san, please be all right. Jiraya sighed as he watched Lee pull further from him and 10-10. Oh Lee. Lee stopped in his tracks, which required a rather long skid, and turned back. Hi. Try to stay with the team, all right? Jiraya said with a cocked eyebrow. Lee's face took on a downcast look. Gomen, it's just that, Sakura-san. Jiraya gave the green-clad ninja a lopsided grin. We'll make it in time. Lee nodded, and the group continued their search. Naruto, Hinata, and Kakashi burst into the room, causing the guards to pull out various weapons. A teenage male pulled out a two-way radio. We're under attack, was all he managed to get out before Hinata used a ground-level spin kick to sweep his legs out from underneath him. The other 5 guards responded to Hinata's attack on their comrade by surrounding the girl, but they didn't get a chance to attack as 3 Narutos came at them. One clone delivered a punch to a male guard's windpipe, sending him choking and gagging to the floor. The real Naruto swung his fist backwards, punching a boy in his mid-teens in the ribcage. The boy's bones broke with a sickening snap. A girl sporting a nasty-looking set of jagged-edged, bladed gloves swung at Naruto's 3rd clone. The clone bent its body backward to avoid it, but was hit from behind by an arrow from a crossbow. Kakashi punched the assailant in the bridge of the nose, and then threw him against the wall, knocking him out. Hinata used her Juken on the girl with the claws and had her unconscious in seconds. Naruto smiled at Hinata. She's gotten more confident. He turned to the final guard, a woman in her mid-30s with waist-length, blonde hair. As he began to throw a roundhouse kick towards her head, he heard her utter a name that made him wish he had been able to stop in time. With her mouth and eyes wide open at the young, blonde ninja attacking her, she spoke one word. Minato. She barely managed to say before his foot connected with her head. Naruto was so shocked at hearing his father's name spoken by this total stranger that he nearly didn't land his kick correctly and stumbled as he regained his balance. He ran over to the woman and picked up her head in his arms. What did you say? The woman used all her remaining strength to reach up a hand and gently touched Naruto's cheek. How, you? She said before losing her battle with unconsciousness. Naruto shook the woman. Hey, how do you know Shisue? Oh, he yelled in vain at the sleeping woman. Naruto-kun. Hinata yelled to get his attention. Naruto turned around to see more gang members flooding from the doorway. Realizing he didn't have time for solving mysteries, he simply grinned. Time for a workout. Sakura used a chakra-filled punch on the gang member in front of her. He hit the wall with a crunch, spider web cracks extending out from the point of impact. Sakura smiled in satisfaction. I'm really starting to get the hang of that. She suddenly noticed someone climbing out of a window midway up the side of the building. Sasuke-kun. Sasuke finished knocking out his current opponent and looked down. I'm on it, he replied, making the 2-story jump to the fire escape where his target was standing. The red-headed girl ducked Sasuke's kick and pulled out a pair of sayas. Out of my way or I'm gonna kick your ass. Sasuke smirked. You better have the skill to back up your mouth, he said as he settled into a classic back stance. Sakura saw the girl bring out her sayas. Sasuke-kun, be careful. Sasuke blocked his opponent's sai thrust with his kunai. I know that. Watch your post, he yelled back in irritation. Sakura blushed in embarrassment and hurried back to her side of the building. Koge Bunshin no Jutsu. A second Naruto appeared and began spinning the chakra onto Naruto's hand. Raising. He charged forward at the attackers who were still in the stairwell, sending unconscious bodies flying left and right. Kakashi sighed, shook his head and turned to Hinata. Let's hurry and take these 2 out so we can follow him. Hinata nodded and made an affirmative sound. A man with broad shoulders and messy brown hair smirked. Let's hurry and take these 2 out, huh? You honestly think it'll be that easy? Kakashi chuckled. I can tell just from looking at your stance that you're not a threat. A black-haired man next to the one who had spoken gritted his teeth. You'll regret that. Kakashi yawned. Yes, let's just get this over with, he said as he lazily slid into his basic stance. The brown-haired man ran at Kakashi, who simply sidestepped and thrust his arm out and forward, giving the man a solid punch to the kidneys. The thug coughed up blood, doubled over and fell to the floor in an undignified heap. The black-haired man looked from Kakashi to his friend on the floor and dropped into a floor-kissing bow. "I surrender." Kakashi smiled. "Good choice," he said, bringing out a rope. "Hinata, can you handle tying them up while I check on Naruto?" Hinata nodded. "Hi." Kakashi handed her the rope and disappeared through the doorway. Sakura had just finished delivering a high-side kick to a woman's head when she noticed a green blur in the distance, heading toward them at lightning speed. She squinted against the sunlight. Lee Kuan. As the blur got closer, she could tell for sure. Sasuke Kuan. Lee Kuan is coming, she yelled excitedly at the raven-haired boy. Nani? Sasuke turned around just in time to see Lee only about 600 feet away, with Tenten and Jiraya trailing not far behind. He waved a hand in the air to get their attention. "Lee, this way," he yelled. Lee turned his head in the direction of a voice he barely caught over the howling of the wind in his ears and turned toward it. He smiled when he saw who it was. "Jiraiya-sama, they're over there." Lee yelled behind him as he sped off towards Sasuke and Sakura. Hinata took extra care tying up the woman who had said the fourth's name. "Who are you?" she thought. She looked around the room at her work. Once she was satisfied that they weren't going anywhere, she ran towards the sounds of fighting emanating from the hallway. Lee landed on the rooftop and ran to Sakura. "Are you all right?" he puffed. "Hi, I'm fine. Go inside and help the others." Sakura replied. Jiraiya shook his head. "Tenten and I will take over out here. You and Lee go." Lee and Sakura gave Jiraiya a puzzled look but hurried inside. Jiraiya breathed a sigh of relief. That was close. If those two were separated, I'd never have heard the end of Lee's whining. Itachi watched Jiraiya's team with irritation as they landed on the roof of the building across the way. He hadn't expected the presence of a Sannin and knew that Jiraiya and Kakashi together would prove to be more hassle than it was worth. "I'll have to wait until Jiraiya leaves before making my move," he thought as he narrowed his eyes. The walls of the first floor of the building had a few speckles of blood on them by the time Hinata had gotten to the bottom of the stairs. It looked like Naruto and Kakashi had already cleared at least 5 more of the gang members. That leaves 25. Still a lot for the 3 of us though, she thought as she chewed her lower lip. "Hinata, don't just stand there." Kakashi scolded. Hinata, ashamed at having been caught doing anything but her job, rushed into the fray. Jiraiya watched Itachi out of the corner of his eye, easily seeing through the genjutsu that was making the uchiha look like an old rooftop generator. "So, he's here already. I'd better warn Kakashi as soon as I have the chance." "Kakashi-sensei!" Sakura yelled over the din. Kakashi whipped his head around. "Sakura, why are you away from your post?" He took down a woman with a roundhouse kick, then noticed that Rock Lee was right behind Sakura. Odd. I wonder why Tsunade would send reinforcements. "Kakashi-sensei, the Godame sent us to inform you that Uchiha Itachi is on his way here to capture Naruto-kun," Lee said. "What?" Kakashi exclaimed as he blocked a punch from a male assailant. Naruto was surrounded by a group of 6 thugs. Koge Bunshin no Jutsu. A perfect clone of Naruto puffed into existence and swirled the chakra on Naruto's palm. He jumped into the air. The clone grabbed him by the ankles and swung him in a circle, raising and Jitan. Kakashi ducked as one of Naruto's attackers sailed by his head. "Naruto, watch what you're doing." "Sorry." Naruto called back as he bounced off the floor with his hands and used the momentum to kick another thug. "Lee, who else is with you?" Kakashi asked. "Tenten and Jiraiya-sama," Lee reported. At that precise moment Naruto lost his balance and took a punch to the face. "Naruto-kun." Hinata called out in alarm. She flat-palmed Naruto's attacker in the windpipe and offered Naruto her hand. "Are you okay?" "Why, yeah," Naruto said as he used Hinata's counterweight to pull himself to a standing position. "Oro-sanin, why are you here?" Lee made an aerial cartwheel, bringing down his feet at the end onto an enemy's shoulders, slamming her to the floor. "Only 5 left." Kakashi crinkled his eyes in concern. "This isn't right, it's too easy." He blocked a thug's dagger with his kunai. "Everyone, be careful, we haven't encountered the ninja members yet." Jiraiya saw 10 flashes of color shoot into the building through the main entrance. "Sasuke, did you see that?" Sasuke nodded. "Hi." I think it's time you headed inside. I'll stand guard. Sasuke nodded again, dropped down to the fire escape and disappeared through a window. He glanced in the direction he'd last seen Itachi, but he was gone. He must have decided Kakashi and I together were a problem. Jiraya suddenly got a sickening smile on his face and rubbed his hands together. If he's no longer a problem, I can check out the women here, he thought. A small trickle of drool leaked from the corner of his mouth. Sakura concentrated her chakra to her right hand and sliced into the arm of the boy in front of her. He howled with pain, but maneuvered behind her, meaning to put her in a choke hold. Sakura simply flipped him forward over her head. He landed on the floor, coughed up some blood, and then lay silent. Sakura was surprised when she heard clapping and looked behind her to see who it was. There were now several new figures concealed by the shadows of the entryway. Very nice, Kakashi, said a woman's voice. Kakashi cocked an eyebrow at hearing this new person use his name. Oh, don't look so surprised. There's hardly a ninja in the entire Fire Country who doesn't know who you are, said the woman as she walked out of the shadows. She had shoulder-length, blonde hair, and blue eyes. She wore a simple pair of black training pants and a skin-tight black leotard. Kakashi squinted. You look familiar. The woman cocked an eyebrow. I ought to. You're the one who introduced my brother to that detestable woman, she nearly spat. Kakashi's eyes went wide. Nariko-chan. Very good, Kakashi, Akuiko said with a venomous glare. Kakashi-sensei, who is she? Naruto asked, looking at the woman intently. As Nariko's subordinate stepped out from the shadows, Kakashi expelled a long puff of air. Naruto, this is Nariko, namikaze Nariko. This is the end of the video. I hope you guys enjoy it and I will see you in the next one.